Chapter 514. The inner world, or inner world, as the name suggested, was a small world that belonged solely to oneself in one's body and primordial spirit. It was not easy to have an inner world that belonged solely to oneself, even in ancient times. There were many reasons involved, and one would not be able to truly possess it if they lacked even a little bit. Possessing it was a matter of time, but whether one could truly cultivate it to the point where it could help oneself required an enormous amount of energy. For example, at the beginning of the inner world, it was a barren land that was no more than 1,000 feet in size. There was a lack of spiritual chi inside, and it was not an exaggeration to say that it was barren. Therefore, if one wanted to cultivate it, in ancient times, most of the great divines would obtain the living soil of 9 heavens, or take a step back and obtain the 5-color divine soil and integrate it into one's inner world. This would allow the barren land to possess the 5 elements' power of heaven and earth. The soil would also become fertile. The terrible situation of the inner world was initially improved. As for how to cultivate and develop it, it was completely up to one's temperament and cultivation method to decide. For example, a cultivator who cultivated an evil Yin cultivation method would develop his inner world in an evil Yin direction, filling it with evil Yin energy. He could then absorb the evil Yin energy in his inner world to strengthen his cultivation and refine his flesh and blood. Under the same power, when he absorbed the power from his inner world, success came naturally, and it was exceptionally smooth. On the other hand, a cultivator who cultivated the killing Tao would cultivate his inner world into a world filled with killing intent, using the killing intent of all living things in the world to aid his cultivation. Generally speaking, the inner world was filled with all kinds of oddities, and almost everyone was different. No matter who it was almost impossible to find 2 inner worlds that were exactly the same in this world. This was because in this world, there were no 2 people who were exactly the same. However, regardless of the time, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was the most basic, and was the most basic foundation for the development of the inner world. Whether it could grow or not depended on the depth of the foundation. However, the inner world could not absorb the chaotic force on its own to produce the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was like a rootless duckweed, and it was even more difficult for it to grow. It was completely dependent on one's own efforts to cultivate it. However, there was one thing that was extremely difficult, and that was how to make the inner world have a large amount of spiritual energy without a lack of it. If he only relied on the force of heaven and earth that he absorbed from the outside during his cultivation, he would definitely not be able to support the growth of his inner world. Of course, some innate spiritual objects also possessed great power that could support the evolution of one's inner world. However, innate spiritual objects were extremely precious. It was difficult for ordinary people to even catch a glimpse of them. Of course, that was also undesirable. Ming seemed to be interested this time. It was also because Di Shitian's successive breakthroughs during this period of time had given him a certain level of strength. He was qualified to know these secrets that were kept secret by many almighty figures. He said leisurely, although the development of the inner world is based on one's own preferences, the root of a world's growth lies in the power of heaven and earth. Yin and Yang and the 5 elements give birth to all living things. Therefore, in order to cultivate a strong inner world, one must have an abundance of power of heaven and earth. Di Shitian was extremely astute. A thought flashed through his mind at lightning speed. He said with certainty, could it be that the source of the power of heaven and earth in the inner world is the spiritual essence of heaven and earth? Although it was a question, his tone was filled with determination. TSK, lunatic D, you are indeed lunatic D. Ming praised, that's right. In fact, in order to support the development of an inner world and allow it to give birth to the power of heaven and earth, Yin and Yang and the 5 elements on its own, one of the methods is to integrate the essence of 5 elements into it. Then, there's the cycle of the sun and the moon, and the alternation of day and night will form a preliminary inner world. However, The essence of 5 elements is the original power of the essence of 5 elements that can only be formed after hundreds of thousands of years in the land of 5 elements. The land of 5 elements is quite unique in the world. It is extremely rare and very difficult to find. It is even more difficult to obtain the essence of 5 elements. In a land of 5 elements, there are usually divine beasts born from the power of 5 elements guarding it. It is extremely difficult to obtain it. With your current cultivation, even if you find it, you can't enter it. The second method is to plant a large amount of spiritual essence of heaven and earth in the inner world. At this moment, Ming was like the water of a yellow river, flowing endlessly. His interest was piqued. He continued, "The spiritual essence is called spiritual essence because it is formed from the essence of heaven and earth. It is the condensation of the essence of heaven and earth, and it is as beautiful as the sun and the moon. It has a strange divine effect. While taking root in the soil and absorbing the essence of heaven and earth, it is also constantly exhaling its own essence and feeding it back to heaven and earth. When it absorbs nutrients from the outside world, it emits the spiritual essence of heaven and earth and its own essence. Lunatic D. You should know that all spiritual essences will emit a strange fragrance when they reach a certain level of maturity. That is the essence chi they emit. The essence chi will disperse in heaven and earth. After a period of time, it will turn into spiritual essence of heaven and earth and float in the inner world. The older the spiritual essence of heaven and earth is, the purer the essence chi it emits will be. If there is a connate spiritual root planted in the inner world, then with that connate spiritual root, there will be no need to worry about spiritual essence of heaven and earth in the future." The more Di Shirtian listened, the brighter his eyes became. Although he did not have a connate spiritual root, he had collected all kinds of spiritual essences of heaven and earth. After this period of plundering and using the method of promoting demon coins, he had gathered millions of spiritual essences of heaven and earth, as well as some rare seeds. If he could plant all these spiritual essences of heaven and earth in the future, when he developed his inner world, wouldn't the essence chi they emit be able to continuously produce abundant spiritual essence of heaven and earth? This was equivalent to accumulating a large amount of spiritual essence of heaven and earth for the future inner world. I can obtain the 5-colored soil from the Shenong's Paradise map. The soil inside is the 5-colored soil. It contains the essence chi of 5 elements. It is the best soil. I have spiritual essences and source seeds of life. Now, what I lack is a source seed of the world. Di Shirtian murmured to himself. After counting carefully, he realized that he was only one step away from the inner world. What he lacked was a world seed. "You have boundless providence on you," Ming said without the slightest bit of worry. Now that the source seed of the world tree is about to mature and the million treasure crimson tide is happening, it won't be a problem for you to obtain a source seed. Anyway, with me by your side to help you, I will definitely help you cultivate a perfect inner world. TSK, I also know how to improve the grade of the source seed of the world and how to transform it to a perfect state. Di Shirtian's eyes flashed. He thought to himself, the million treasure red tide is right in front of me. I've already used up most of my trump cards in the 1000 Beast sect. This time, I just happened to reach the 4th transformation realm and condense a domain. It's time to add another trump card. Thinking of this, he turned to Chun Shi in his arms and said softly, we will soon depart for the God's Fall Abyss. I want to cultivate another divine ability. For the time being, you will have to take care of the monster kings in the valley. Also, Tian Xiang. When he mentioned Bai Hu, an indescribable expression flashed across Di Shirtian's face. He paused for a moment before continuing. She has done me a great favor in the past. I hope you can take her around the valley in the next few days. It's fine even if you have to enter the exquisite pagoda. I believe you two will get along well. Chun Shi rolled her eyes at him coquettishly. Her tone was slightly off as she said, I will take care of Sister Sue. I won't object to a man having 3 wives and 4 concubines. However, I hope you won't hide some things from me. I'm not the kind of woman who can't tolerate others." In her words, there was a hint of jealousy, but she didn't hide it. Obviously, she was also a little upset. She said, "Since you want to cultivate divine abilities, then go quickly. It's only less than 10 days before we depart." Tion felt a little guilty. He lovingly kissed Chun-Chi's snow-white forehead and affectionately stroked her soft hair. He nodded and said, 10 days is enough. He didn't indulge in these romantic affairs. There were too many things waiting for him to do. It wasn't easy for him to fall in love with someone. In front of him was a hazy and winding road. He needed to use his hands and the saber in his hand to open a path full of thorns. He turned around and entered the exquisite pagoda. He went straight to the fourth layer of heaven. In the fourth layer of heaven, Tian Can and Huang Quan were using the source of life to heal their injuries. Looking at their expressions, there was a ruddy glow on their faces. Obviously, they were many times better than when they first started. However, with their injuries, the source of life could only preserve their lifespan and increase the profound qi in their bodies. It could give life to their withered flesh and blood again. As for the specific injuries, they still needed time to slowly heal. Seeing Tian come in, the two old men hurriedly stood up and greeted him respectfully. "Your Majesty, are you going to the God's Fall Abyss?" During this time, with the nourishment of the source of life and the help of the heavenly Yin-Yang bridge, we should be able to resist the million treasures red tide for a short time. Tian Can's eyes were shining. Although he had a head of snow-white hair, he was full of spirit. The divine light was restrained. The golden vertical mark between his eyebrows added a bit of invisible power. Sakura glanced at the two elders and noticed that the situation in their bodies had already begun to improve. He couldn't help but nod inwardly and said, "This time, Ben Wang has obtained a batch of spirit herbs. You two elders can take them from Susu at will. I believe that it will be of considerable help in restoring your inner worlds. There's still some time before we leave. This time, I came here to cultivate a divine power. You don't have to worry about it." Although he had the century slave seal, he was not a stingy person. The celestial silkworm and yellow spring elders were now his deepest hidden trump card. In the future, they would definitely be able to guard the myriad demon city and deter the myriad of worlds. This little bit of winning them over was just a matter of convenience. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 515. This made Tian Can and Huang Quan overjoyed. Their inner worlds were almost completely drained during the period of suppression. The spiritual qi inside was completely exhausted. The worlds that they had cultivated were constantly collapsing. They had shrunk to the size of other cultivators' inner worlds, which were only a few hundred feet in size. If they continued to collapse, their inner worlds would collapse on the spot. Now, they needed a large amount of spiritual essence of heaven and earth to nourish their inner worlds. Hearing Tian's words, how could they not be overjoyed? They hurriedly thanked him without saying anything. Tian did not pay too much attention to it. He found an empty spot in the fourth heaven and sat down cross-legged. Divine light flashed in his hand, and 6 divine feathers that looked like gemstones and crystals appeared in his left hand. Looking at the divine feathers, the divine light was different. Although there were 6 of them, there were 3 different types of divine light. One was purple, one was red, and one was blue. The purple was incomparably noble. The red one emitted an incomparably blazing aura. The blue one flashed with an exceptionally shocking, icy aura. He gently placed his hand on the divine feathers and stroked the mysterious patterns on the divine feathers. Vaguely, there was a strange and mysterious talisman on the divine feathers. Each divine feather exuded a unique and proud aura, especially the purple one, which was the most noble. Dark, you said that as long as I reach the 4th transformation stage of the Yaodan realm and become an ancient demon king, I will have enough strength to refine these divine feathers and obtain the innate ability of the imperial phoenix bird. the tricolored divine light. What should I do now? Di Chertion looked at the divine feathers with a hint of excitement and passion in his eyes. The Emperor Phoenix was the most powerful king of the savage beasts that he had encountered in the heaven-reaching tower. Back then, he was almost chased to the ends of the earth by them. He was battered and exhausted. When the divine light brushed past people, they would be directly swept into the divine light. When it brushed past objects, they would be swept away easily. It was incomparably powerful. At that time, even Di Chertion was swept into the divine feathers and was almost burned to ashes by the flames in the divine feather space. It was truly terrifying. The sharpness of the divine light could be said to be heaven-defying. If he had not encountered the corpse demon that carried the coffin and was directly pulled into the black coffin and devoured, Di Chertion would most likely have met his end. Later on, he spied on the Emperor Phoenix's divine ability and used the source seed to exchange for these 6 divine feathers. It was also that one day he could obtain the divine ability of the Emperor Phoenix's divine ability. And now it was time. However, Di Chertion did not know how to transfer the divine ability of the divine feathers. Otherwise, there was really no other way. The Emperor Phoenix's tricolored divine light. Haha, lunatic D, you're really lucky. Back then, in the ancient times, the first peacock in the world was born with 5 divine lights, known as the 5-color divine lights. They belonged to the 5 elements, and as long as one was within the 5 elements, regardless of whether one was a human or an object, they would be restrained by the divine lights, directly sucked into the divine lights. That power, TSK, was truly earth-shattering. Relying on the power of the 5-color divine light, it dominated the world and was almost unrivaled. It was a top existence among the peerless experts, a character that ran amok without fear. In the ancient times, everyone was afraid of the Peacock King when they talked about it. Looking at the 6 divine feathers in front of him, Ming's voice was full of emotions. He recalled some things in the ancient times. When he talked about the Peacock King, his tone changed and was no longer as old and arrogant as before. There was a hint of fear in his tone. The 5-color divine light was a true heaven-defying divine ability. It was 100 times more powerful than the Emperor Phoenix's tricolored divine light. It was extremely mystical and terrifying. Almost nothing in the 5 elements could escape the power of the divine light. Di Chertion was also looking forward to it. Unfortunately, he only had 3 divine lights in his hand. Moreover, the purple divine feather did not seem to be in the 5 elements. Together, it was only the fire and water divine lights. He lacked 3 elements in the 5 elements. It was impossible to form the 5-color divine light. He could only think about it in his heart for a while. Lunatic D, do you want to cultivate the 5-color divine light? Ming's next sentence directly shocked Di Chertion, causing endless waves to surge in his heart. The divine light in his eyes shot out 3 zhong away. So what if I wanna? The 5-color divine light is a divine ability that has reached the peak of the 5 elements. It can suppress all things of the 5 elements and is extremely powerful. Even if I wanna, what can I do? I can't gather all 5 divine lights. Di Chertion was determined. He took a deep breath and suddenly said, Ming, do you have a way? However, someone immediately said doubtfully, that's not right. Although the imperial phoenix bird is born with divine light, their divine light is all the same. 2 of them must be water and fire. It's simply impossible for the other 5 elements to appear. Lunatic D. Do you know that in the ancient times, when the Peacock King mastered the 5-color divine light, he knew that among the savage beasts, the Emperor Phoenix was born with divine lights just like him. He went to look for an Emperor-level savage beast, the Emperor Phoenix, whose strength was comparable to an unparalleled expert. They fought fiercely. Guess who won and who lost? Dark said to Sakura in a teasing manner. Could it be the Emperor Phoenix? Di Chertion was shocked and said in disbelief. Given Ming's temperament, if it was normal, it would definitely not ask such a question. There must be something unusual about it. That was why it spoke in such a tone. Sure enough, Ming said strangely, "That's right. In that battle, the Emperor Phoenix did have the upper hand because it was not afraid of the five-color divine light at all." "How can that be?" "Hee. The key lies in the purple divine feather." Ming saw Di Shitian's surprise and said with a strange smile, "That purple divine feather is extremely magical and can be called a divine object. It is not part of the five elements, but it can evolve the five elements on its own. It could transform into any of the five elements' divine lights. As long as it is willing, that purple divine feather can immediately turn golden and transform into golden divine light. The power in it can also transform into the power of the five elements. Moreover, it is extremely noble and has the noble aura of an emperor. Moreover, it can restrain the power of the five elements. It can evolve the five elements at will. It can exert the same power as the five-color divine light." When these words fell into Di Shitian's ears, it was no less than a mountain of gold suddenly falling on his head. His eyes flashed. Thoughts flashed in his mind as he thought to himself, "If I fuse with that purple divine feather, won't I get a powerful divine ability that is not inferior to the five-colored divine light?" Ming was very smart. When he saw Di Shitian, he knew what he was thinking. He could not help but laugh strangely. "Crazy D, don't dream that you can get the five-color divine light after fusing with the purple divine feather. The Emperor Phoenix can only use its divine feather and transform it into any divine light after becoming an Emperor-level savage beast. As for you, TSK, I'm afraid you can only evolve one type of divine light. Then what should I do?" Di Shitian calmed down and asked seriously. At this moment, Ming stopped joking and finally told him his idea. The purple divine feather was the most noble and precious type of divine feather. Moreover, it could evolve any type of divine light of the five elements on its own. When it reached a high level, it could evolve the five-color divine light at will and possess boundless power. However, if it was refined, it would be limited by the cultivation level. At most, it could only be used to evolve one type of divine light at a time. Only when one had a breakthrough and became an unparalleled expert could one use it to evolve the five elements. It could truly exert its boundless power. Only one type of divine light could be used. This was obviously not what Di Shitian wanted. Ming obviously did not want to do this either. Therefore, he thought of another way. Since the purple divine feather could only evolve one type of divine light, if other types of divine light were to be fused into the purple divine feather, for example, if the red divine feather was to be fused into the purple divine feather, the red divine light would definitely be fused into the purple divine feather. This would allow the purple divine feather to possess the power of the fire element without conversion. Then, after fusing with Lanyu, there would be additional water elemental power. Since there were two purple divine feathers, they could evolve into two types of power of the five elements. In this way, the divine feathers contained four of the five elements. However, if he did that, he would have to pay the price of not being able to produce any other divine light in the future. In other words, even if he became an unparalleled powerhouse, he would still only have the four elements and not the five elements. This was a huge price to pay in exchange for the opportunity to obtain the four-color divine light in advance. The price was indeed a little too high. As for the other type, it required a long period of time to wait. Only when one reached the level of an unparalleled expert could one derive the five elements. In the long run, this was naturally the most appropriate method. As for how to choose, it would be up to Sakura himself. Sakura couldn't help but close his eyes and ponder in his mind after Ming finished speaking. This matter was truly too important. After a while, Di Shitian suddenly opened his eyes and said decisively, "A bird in the hand is better than 10 birds in the bush. I chose to refine the four divine lights. I'm missing one of the five elements. Although it's a flaw, I'll just enter the Tong Tian Tower again in the future and find another Imperial Phoenix bird. I'll pluck that purple feather from its body and complete my divine ability. If I have to wait until I become an unparalleled powerhouse to obtain it, then the five-color divine light is just icing on the cake. is far less important and helpful to me now. Indeed, the only thing that mattered now was to increase his own strength. Everything else was far more important than his current strength. This was because he didn't know what he would encounter in the Godfall abyss. Only by increasing his strength and superpower could he preserve his life in the future. Otherwise, if he didn't even have his life, why would he need superpower? All right, TSK. I will teach you how to refine the divine light. That's right. Just based on this decisiveness, you are definitely not an ordinary person. Even if you lack one of the 5 elements, you can just pluck another one from the Emperor Phoenix to complete it. You might even be able to obtain the 5-color divine light in advance. Listen carefully to the refining method. Nether spoke and transmitted the refining method into his mind. To be continued. If you want to know the rest, please go to www.chijian.com to read more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 516. Sakura listened quietly, as if he had heard something inconceivable. In his eyes, there was a kind of astonished look that was constantly changing. There was some disbelief, some excitement, and some excitement in his eyes. When Ming finished speaking, he closed his eyes slightly and thought about what he had just heard. He started to deduce silently to see if it was feasible. As he deduced, he became more and more excited. Good. After a long while, he praised, "Underworld is indeed underworld." As expected of the soul of the murderous weapon that followed the emperor of the underworld in the ancient times. Your knowledge is so vast that it's unbelievable that you could come up with such a plan. In this way, the 5-color divine light will be like my innate divine ability in the future. When I use it, there won't be any awkwardness. It will be extraordinary. Its power will increase continuously. I will have an additional divine ability. Xiao Chun did not hide his praise for Ming. Ming was not modest at all and accepted all the praises. He said proudly, TSK, with my vast knowledge and experience, I have interrogated many experts in the past. In this world, how many people dare to say that they are stronger and more knowledgeable than me? In the ancient times, who didn't know of my name, it's just a small matter to refine a divine ability. His 2 eyes were raised to the sky. Whoosh! Di-Shir Tian smiled inwardly and did not comment on Ming's boasting. He turned around and waved his hand. The storage ring in his hand shone with spiritual light. Instantly, bottles and jars flew out of the ring and landed in front of him. Among those things, there was a large number of white jade wine gourds. They were filled with spiritual wine that could replenish vitality and recover true power. There were many small jade bottles that were filled with elixirs that could increase vitality. There were also various spiritual fruits that emitted a strange fragrance. These things whizzed out and filled the ground in front of him. If there was a cultivator here, even if he was a tribulation stage cultivator or an ascendant realm cultivator, his eyes would turn red and he would pounce over to snatch them away. Swoosh! Heavenly punishment divine eyes open. As he shouted in his heart, the purple mark between his eyebrows rapidly opened. At the same time, an eye rapidly opened. In the blink of an eye, a completely purple eye appeared on his forehead. That eye contained boundless majesty. It was as if it was looking down on all living things in the world, but also as if it loved all living things. It was a kind of high and mighty heavenly might that could not be blasphemed. It was as if it represented the noblest majesty in the world, causing people to tremble uncontrollably in front of it, unable to summon any courage to look it in the eye. It was as if he could see through a person's soul and mind. Tian Can and Huang Quan felt an invisible fear rising in their hearts, especially the vertical eye between their eyebrows. It emitted an aura of joy and submission. Tian Can's heart trembled. He could feel that when his vertical eye saw the heavenly punishment divine eye, it was like a child seeing its parents. That kind of reverence seemed to come from the bottom of his heart. He didn't even have the slightest ability to resist it. That was the heavens, that was everything. The shock in his heart was incomparable. Although they guessed that Tion was extremely extraordinary, they did not expect that he would have such a powerful divine ability. This divine, I had the power of the heavenly way to spy on all things. At this moment, how could they not understand that the divine ability they obtained from the 100-generation slave seal should be the divine ability of this heavenly punishment divine I? Gar! Huang Quan shouted. He knew that Tion probably had something important to do this time, so he immediately guarded by his side. Tian did the same. Heavenly punishment divine flame, appear. Tion did not pay attention to the situation outside. All of his attention was focused on the heavenly punishment divine eye. He controlled the divine eye, and from the divine eye, a ray of purple light burst out. However, this ray of divine light did not burst out. Instead, it was restrained in front of him. Waves of divine power burst out from the divine eye, becoming stronger and stronger. With a swoosh, the power of heavenly punishment mysteriously gathered in front of him, condensing into a purple divine flame. This purple flame was condensed by the power of the heavenly punishment divine eye, and was called the heavenly punishment divine flame. Good, good, good. The heavenly punishment divine flame has been condensed. Quickly, use the power of the divine flame to refine the 4 divine feathers. Whether or not you can cultivate this divine ability will depend entirely on your own luck. Nether shouted loudly. However, Sakura wasn't affected in the slightest. He unhurriedly placed the divine feathers in his hands aside. First, he picked up that purple divine feather and lightly stroked it. Without any hesitation, he raised his hand and threw it towards the heavenly punishment divine flame. The divine feather floated above the divine flames. Divine light circulated around it, and purple light flickered. Under the divine flames, the purple light on the surface of the seemingly indestructible divine feather dimmed unceasingly, as if it was being burned away by the divine flames. Purple feather Rui, the 5 elements are gold. His expression was very serious. He formed a seal with his hand, and it fell into the purple feather. Suddenly, the aura of the purple feather turned into a murderous and sharp power of gold. However, the purple light on the purple feather did not dissipate. The entire divine feather was melting under the power of the heavenly punishment divine flame at a speed visible to the naked eye. Smack! Indra casually picked up a wine gourd, opened it, and poured it into his mouth. In a blink of an eye, the entire gourd was emptied. Then, without any hesitation, he picked up the other gourds and opened them one after another, pouring them into his mouth continuously. One gourd after another. In the middle, there were a large number of medicinal pills that he swallowed like eating melons and fruits. This is not good. Master's true power is being consumed too quickly to support this divine eye. He is replenishing the true power in his body. What kind of divine eye is this? It is so overbearing. Huang Quan saw through the truth with a single glance and exclaimed in shock. Although the heavenly punishment divine eye was powerful, it required a huge amount of energy to activate it. With his current cultivation, he could only support the use of the heavenly punishment divine eye 3 times and use the divine ability 3 times. After 3 times, the energy in his body would be almost exhausted. Now, he was not using it 3 times. He was using the power of the divine eye to condense the divine flame in front of him. As long as the divine flame was there, it was equivalent to continuously extracting a huge amount of energy from his body. At this moment, if one could see the scene in his body, they would find that in the demon mansion. Waves of golden true power turned into a long river and poured out of the demon mansion. Along the demon vein, it poured into the heavenly punishment divine eye. With this kind of huge consumption, the light of the 5th stage black love in his body dimmed in the blink of an eye. Even the 11 mysterious runes inscribed on the black love became dim. This consumption was too terrifying, not to mention that he was now a demon king. Even if he was a great demon, he might not be able to support it. And when the spirit wine entered his stomach, it immediately turned into rolling essence chi and rushed into the Black Lotus. It quickly turned into true power and supported the huge consumption. Especially the origin returning wine, it turned into a huge amount of essence chi and allowed the true power in his body to recover at an incredible speed. But this was only temporarily equal to the consumption of the divine eye. Fortunately, the power of the heavenly punishment divine flame did not go to waste. This huge amount of heaven and earth spiritual essence was indeed powerful. Even the divine feather was melting under the burning of the divine flame at a speed visible to the naked eye. In a moment, it was melted into a purple liquid by the divine flame. In the purple liquid, it emitted a strong power of the origin of gold. When he saw that the divine feather was melting, he immediately threw in another divine feather. This time, it was a scarlet divine feather. The scarlet divine feather melted faster than the purple divine feather. The divine flame was really powerful. After a moment, the red divine feather was also melted into a red liquid under the power of the divine flame. Merge! With a soft shout, he formed a seal and used his tenacious will to control the two balls of liquid to quickly collide with each other. There was no fierce battle. Instead, the red ball of liquid was very happy to be able to get close to the purple ball of liquid. It easily entered the purple ball of liquid, and the volume of the purple ball of liquid quickly doubled after colliding with the red ball of liquid. However, the color did not change at all. It was still that kind of rich purple. But inside, it was emitting two completely different auras. One was incomparably sharp, and the other was irritable and domineering. Logically speaking, if these two were put together, there would be a fierce collision on the spot. If they fought, it would be either one of them who died. But it was unknown what was so magical about this purple liquid. It contained the two different powers of the origin, but there was no fierce battle between them. Instead, it was peaceful, which was very strange. This made Di Shirtian, who was on guard against this kind of thing, secretly surprised and couldn't help but be overjoyed. He breathed a big sigh of relief in his heart and hurriedly put another purple feather into the divine flame. This time, the five elements origin that the purple feather transformed into was the wood origin. In this way, when more than half of the spiritual wine, spiritual essence, and elixir pills in front of him were consumed, finally, all four divine feathers were quickly melted under the power of the heavenly punishment divine flame. All of them merged into the purple liquid. In the liquid, there were five elements origins: metal, wood, water, and fire. Only the last earth origin was missing. 7 sins bewitching zither, borrow the power of the earth element to complete the 5 elements. The 7 sins bewitching zither made a soft sound in the bewitching mansion and flew out directly from the top of his head. Moreover, the earth spirit bead inlaid on the zither suddenly surged with strong and pure earth origin power. It turned into an earthy yellow divine light and instantly shot toward the divine flame. To be continued. If you want to know what happens next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 517. The Earth Spiritual Pearl inlaid on the 7 sins demonic zither was a divine object that could only be formed after thousands of years of accumulation of the Earth essence. It was truly a rare treasure. The origin power within it was the largest and purest part of the world. Even if there was a yellow divine feather that belonged to the Earth element, the origin power contained within it was absolutely incomparable to the Earth's spiritual pearl. Now, on the divine flame, a total of 4 of the 5 elements had gathered, and only the earth element power was missing. At this moment, Di Shirtian did not hesitate to drive the earth's spiritual pearl to release a pure earth element power into the purple liquid. Boom, boom, boom. When the earth element power was injected into the liquid, the originally calm purple liquid began to vibrate violently in an instant. The ball of liquid burst forth with a dazzling purple light. In the purple light, it exuded an incomparably noble aura, and a strong pressure instantly spread out in all directions. At the same time, the surrounding heaven and earth essence, as if suddenly dropped thousands of tons of terrifying explosives, suddenly exploded with a bang. Like boiling water, it violently tumbled, as if a pervert who had been locked up in a prison for hundreds of years had seen a beautiful woman and instantly became excited. In all directions, a strong five elements power rose up. It converged like a tide above the divine flame, forming a funnel-like vortex. A huge amount of five elements power madly surged into the liquid. At the same time, a strong purple light, like a sun, burst forth with dazzling divine light. Even Tion could not help but close his eyes. However, the heavenly punishment divine, I had always seen everything clearly. With his ability to dispel falsehoods, he easily saw through everything. In the purple light, the ball of purple liquid, in an instant, turned into mysterious talismans and quickly flew out. Almost in the blink of an eye, it turned into countless talismans hovering in midair. Each talisman seemed to have infinite mysteries. As they spun rapidly, there was a mysterious power in the purple light that caused these talismans to gather together. Hovering, they condensed into a compass-like purple jade plate. On the surface of the jade plate, countless mysterious runes flickered, revealing countless profound patterns. Inside, the power of the four elements, metal, wood, water, and fire, faintly circulated, dividing the jade plate into five identical parts, just like the power of the five elements. Among them, metal, wood, water, and fire respectively occupied the four positions. Only the position that belonged to the origin of the earth element was missing one of the five elements. Five elements plate. Haha, as I expected, with the support of these four divine feathers and the earth spirit bead to temporarily replenish the five elements, something miraculous really will happen. He actually managed to condense such a five elements plate. When Dark saw the purple jade plate and sensed the power within the jade plate, he couldn't help but laugh arrogantly. The five elements plate. Within the jade plate, there were five types of spaces that belonged to the five elements. The reason why the divine feather could kill people and items was because within the divine feather, there was a unique space that was created by the power of the origin. Each space was different from the others. For example, within the red divine feather, there was a space that was filled with raging flames. It was extremely mysterious. The five elements plate was formed by gathering these five kinds of spaces. The plate was divided into five parts, which represented the five elements. Each part was an independent space. Unfortunately, at this moment, the five elements plate was still lacking the earth element, so it wasn't really complete. Quick! Lunatic D quickly merged the five elements plate with the heavenly punishment divine eye. Then, the heavenly punishment divine eye will have one more divine ability, the five-color divine light. Moreover, the five elements plate will certainly be able to complete the nether prison in the divine eye and suppress the nether prison. Its power is endless. Dark shouted loudly and madly. Five elements plate, merge with the divine eye. Evolve the divine ability and return it to my divine eye. Tion quickly condensed countless mysterious seals in his hands and sent them directly into the five elements plate. At the same time, a beam of divine light shot out of the heavenly punishment divine eye and fell on the jade plate. The five elements plate was pulled into the divine eye. Boom, boom, boom. As soon as the five elements plate entered the divine eye, it immediately appeared in the nether prison. Immediately, the power of the nether prison poured into the jade plate, completely connecting it with the nether prison. It had truly become a part of the nether prison. At the same time, the jade plate turned into a beam of purple light and sank down from the first layer of the nether prison. The second layer, the third layer, it broke through the 18th layer of the nether prison and rushed directly into the 19th layer. In the endless abyss, it appeared directly above the purple pool in the abyss. The water in the purple pool surged violently and inexplicably boiled. Bursts of purple gas rose and poured into the five elements plate. As the five elements plate rotated, the gas was constantly sucked into the jade plate. At the same time, the jade plate also mysteriously merged with the nether prison. In the jade plate, for more terrifying five elements purgatories appeared. Tian calmed down and carefully observed the process of the formation of the second divine restriction. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. The heavenly punishment divine eye and the infernal prison were almost complementary to each other. Once the divine eye was upgraded, the infernal prison would inevitably begin to expand violently again from its current size of thousands of feet to several times larger. But it didn't happen at all. The infernal prison still didn't show any signs of expansion. It was just like before, but the infernal prison became more stable and unbreakable. Moreover, for some unknown reason, he kept having the feeling that the second divine seal was not complete. When it was circulating, there were some parts that were extremely jerky. It was as if something was missing, causing the circulation to be unable to reach a perfect state. Could it be that the second innate divine restriction appeared because of the five elements plate? The five elements plate lacked one of the five elements, so it's not complete. Therefore, the innate divine restriction is also incomplete. He murmured to himself. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it should be so. As expected, although the second innate divine restriction appeared, it was extremely illusory. It wasn't as stable as the first one, as if it could disappear at any time. Obviously, it wasn't completely formed. It still lacked one of the elements. It seems that I need to fill in the last element in the future to completely form the second innate divine restriction. At that time, I believe that the heavenly punishment divine I will also be upgraded. Another breakthrough. Tian took a deep breath and thought to himself. He wasn't too disappointed. He secretly began to sense the divine eye. Immediately, he understood the changes of the heavenly punishment divine eye in his mind. Sure enough, in the divine eye, a new divine ability was derived from the original one, the five-color divine light. However, the five-color divine light was still incomplete. It was still an incomplete divine ability. Among the five colors, only four of them could be used. However, it was already extremely powerful. It was enough to restrain most divine abilities and magic treasures. Phew! After seeing that he already had the divine ability of the Emperor Phoenix Bird, Tian couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Without saying anything, he closed his eyes again and focused his mind on his body. He operated the Book of Shocking World. The power of heaven and earth around him suddenly surged into his body like a tide. It quickly passed through the demon veins and restored the almost exhausted true force in his body. This refining could be said to be a complete success. Not only did he obtain the five-color divine light, but he also integrated it into the heavenly punishment divine eye. This meant that the five-color divine light had become his divine ability. As he improved, its power would continue to increase. After this million treasure crimson tide, I will have to go to the Tong Tian Tower again. If I don't complete the five elements board, my new divine ability, the five-color divine light, will not be complete. There will be flaws. A thought flashed through his mind. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 518. He secretly thought about returning to the Tower of Babel again. However, the most important thing now was the God's Fall Abyss and the Million Treasures Red Tide. All the foundation of development had been placed on this trip to the Abyss. That was the most important thing. Phew! After a long time, ever since the divine ability to refine the five-color divine light entered heaven's punishment divine eye, the true power in Tian's body was almost depleted on the spot. Now, 2 days had passed, and he recovered. He slowly exhaled and stood up from the grass. When he opened his eyes, there was a flash of light. There was a kind of threatening aura in it. "Congratulations, my lord," for gaining another divine ability and improving your cultivation. Tian Can and Huang Quan were both old monsters. When they saw Di Shitian's aura after he adjusted his breath, how could they not know that he had not only gained a new divine ability, but also improved his cultivation? His true power was purer than before. They hurriedly congratulated him. Yes, thank you for your kindness. Di Shitian nodded slightly and said, you two continue to stay here and cultivate in seclusion. Try your best to recover from your injuries. When the Million Treasures Red Tide comes, it will all depend on you two to display your divine ability and drive the heavenly yin-yang bridge to cross the red tide. How much benefits we can get from the red tide will depend on you two, he said with a serious expression. Rest assured, my lord. Tian Can and Huang Quan looked at each other and said with certainty, with the help of my lord's source of life, our exhausted inner worlds have begun to recover. Although there is still a long way to go before we can fully recover, I believe that if we only display the power of the heavenly yin-yang bridge, my lord should be able to seize the most precious treasures in the red tide. You two rest quietly. This time, I will take the exquisite creation pagoda with me. Di Shitian looked up at the sky, and his eyes became abnormally deep. 3 days later, a high platform was built in the middle of the valley. On the platform, Di Shitian and the 8 monster kings stood together. In front of the platform, a large group of monsters stood in front of them. The subordinates of the various demon kings were clearly stratified and easy to distinguish. Every demon king's subordinates stood in their respective areas. They were divided into 8 groups. Due to the help of the purple thunder rain, all of their subordinates were able to transform first. Therefore, all of their subordinates had humanoid faces. The total number of subordinates under the 8 great monster kings was over 10 million. Although most of them were able to transform, most of them had not reached the realm of condensing an inner core. When they gathered together, their wild nature spread out, causing the air in the valley to become somewhat heavy. Each of them had some outstanding elites, but most of them were on their own, and there wasn't much cooperation. Even so, they were a black mass, and at a glance, there would be a kind of fear and oppression. 10 million demons. That number was not given for nothing. Any cultivator would feel a chill in their hearts if they were to face such a scene. However, what really caught the Demon King's attention was the area on the left. They saw 4 war flags fluttering in the wind. On the war flags, the figures of the 4 divine beasts floated up lifelike. Azure Dragon, White Tiger, Vermilion Bird, and Black Tortoise. There seemed to be a strange power condensing on the 4 war flags, as if the figures on the war flags were alive. Behind the battle flag were neat rows of demon soldiers. They wore the same armor and stood upright. Their bodies exuded a murderous aura of iron and blood. Standing together, it was as if they were a whole. Array formation. Sakura waved his long sleeves and decisively spat out these 2 words. Boom, boom, boom. Behind the Azure Dragon war flag, the Azure Dragon demon soldiers took 3 steps forward. These 3 steps did not make any noise. The hundreds of thousands of demon soldiers moved as if they were one person. When they lifted their feet and when they landed, they all stepped on the same point. These 3 steps were terrifyingly orderly, and when they stepped on the ground, it almost made the earth tremble. The mountains and rivers shook. It was as if thousands of soldiers and horses were surging forward. Azure Dragon Army Commander Chi Hua, Vice Commander Long Yu, Shui Ling and 300,000 soldiers are here to listen to the order. The army is full of 300,000 soldiers, and 300,000 soldiers are here. Please inspect the army, my king. Chi Hua, who was wearing the Azure Dragon war armor, had a strong aura. His face was full of iron and blood as he said respectfully. The Azure Dragon army was wearing the same armor. On the armor, there was an image of a coiling azure dragon with a dragon claw. Naturally, there was a kind of ferocious aura that spread out. Boom, boom, boom. Behind the Azure Dragon army, the White Tiger war flag also took 3 steps forward. The orderly steps were like stepping on the hearts of the Demon Kings. White Tiger Army Commander Yuan Zhan, Vice Commander Shi Shitian, Kuei Niu, and 300,000 soldiers are here to listen to the order. The army is full of 300,000 soldiers, and 300,000 soldiers are here to listen to the order. Black Ape King Yuanzhan opened his mouth and shouted loudly. The armor they were wearing was also the same. It was a white tiger armor with a roaring white tiger on it. Vermilion Bird Army Commander Ing Kong, Vice Commander Jin Xian, and Peacock are here to listen to the order. The army is full of 300,000 soldiers, and 300,000 soldiers are here to listen to the order. Please inspect the army, my king. Ing Kong also led the Vermilion Bird Army forward. Their entire army was wearing the scarlet Vermilion Bird war armor. Xuanwu Army Commander Xiongba, leading 300,000 soldiers, are here to listen to the order. The army is full of 300,000 soldiers, and 300,000 soldiers are here to listen to the order. Please inspect the army, my king. Xiongba also stepped forward, leading the Xuanwu army behind him. The Xuanwu army didn't have a vice commander, but their aura was also very extraordinary. When they stepped forward, they emitted a strong aura that was as heavy as a mountain. The army was moving like a moving mountain. Their momentum was unstoppable. The four armies were named after the divine beasts. Each army had 300,000 soldiers at full strength. The four armies added together had a total of 1,200,000 soldiers. The standard to enter each army was that one's cultivation had to be at the level of condensing a Niden. Those who didn't would be rejected at the door. Therefore, the 1,200,000 soldiers were all elites who had condensed a Niden. Good. Di Shirtian looked at the four armies in front of him with satisfaction and nodded. He then said in a deep voice, "All armies listen to the order. Gather the four divine beasts and help our allies to go to the 1,000 Beast sect. We obey the king's order. All soldiers listen to the order. Gather into the Green Dragon battle formation. Vermilion Bird battle formation." In an instant, the four armies quickly moved under the orders of their commanders, forming a mysterious battle formation. At the same time, the flags turned into clouds and enveloped all the soldiers. Roar! In the clouds, a huge azure dragon that was thousands of feet long roared and rushed into the clouds. It shuttled back and forth in the clouds. After the azure dragon, a white tiger, a vermilion bird, and a black tortoise all appeared without any warning. What was strange was that the soldiers of the four legions had mysteriously disappeared from their original positions. The four divine beasts were enormous in size. They swept up the other demons in the valley and carried them on their backs. Then they rushed into the clouds and rushed in the direction of the 1,000 Beast sect. It's a battle formation. It's rumored that not many people are willing to use this battle formation since the ancient times. The four divine beast battle formation actually appeared here. 1,200,000 soldiers, well-trained, obedient, and able to form a battle formation. TSK. Such a demon army. Even if they were to face an enemy 10 times their number, they would be defeated on the spot. The 1,000 Demon Valley is so powerful. To be able to train such an army, they are indeed a man of great talent and strategy. When the Monster Kings saw the scene in front of them, their hearts were in turmoil. Finally, they saw the true strength of the 1,000 Demon Valley for the first time. It was indeed incredible. The subordinates they led were not few, each with more than 1,000,000 soldiers. However, compared to the four armies, they were like beggars and tycoons. To be honest, looking at the demon soldiers of the 1,000 Demon Valley and their own subordinates, the Monster Kings felt an inexplicable sense of shame in their hearts. They were too ashamed to face anyone. Battle matrices were not just for show. They were killing matrices that truly possessed great power. Furthermore, they were only suitable for the army. With the power of the battle formation, the power of the entire army would be gathered in one place and burst out with unparalleled destructive power. Its power was simply unimaginable. For example, these 300,000 little demons, who only had the strength of condensing Niden, formed a battle formation. With the power of the battle formation, they summoned the real body of the Azure Dragon. With their own bodies, they turned into the Azure Dragon. All the power in the bodies of the 300,000 elites was condensed into one. The power that burst out was so powerful that even the ancient monster kings, or even the great demons, would have to temporarily resist it. However, this battle formation required the people who were practicing it to have a certain degree of tacit understanding with each other. They had to be well-versed in their positions. Unless it was a well-trained army, it was impossible to unleash the true power of the battle formation. If the Azure Dragon battle formation was given to other demon kings, and their subordinates were to practice it, not to mention the battle formation, even the formation would be a mess. The battle formation condensed the 4 divine beasts, leading the group of demons and shuttling directly in the direction of the 1,000 Beast sect, quickly moving through the clouds. Tion and the other monster kings also displayed their own abilities and went together. As a result, the originally lively southern barbarian suddenly became deserted. Even the exquisite pagoda also disappeared. However, they did not see that on a mountain peak outside the southern barbarian, 2 figures stood on the top of the mountain, silently watching the scene of the mighty army leaving. These 2 figures were not unfamiliar. One of them was very sloppy. If it was not the know-it-all, who else could it be? Next to him was the cold and ruthless demon monarch, who was full of demon chi. A pair of cold eyes watched the army leave. He did not say a word. However, his eyes fell on Tion most of the time. There seemed to be a flash of surprise. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 519. Demon Lord, what do you think of Tion now? The know-it-all advisor looked at the departing army and reached out to stroke his messy beard. He chuckled and said, to be able to rise from nothing in a short 20 years, from an ignorant little black tiger to the demon king who can dominate an area, with tens of millions of demons hoarding in the valley and millions of elites, such a demon army like the one just now was rare even in ancient times. Generally, military formations would only be trained for battles in the secular world. Imagine, when one's strength was above the secular world and cultivated to the point where one's hand could cause great destruction. Then, no matter if it was a demon or a cultivator, who wouldn't want to climb to a higher level and possess greater strength? With strength, who would be willing to be restrained? Originally, the purpose of cultivation was to break the shackles of heaven and earth, to be free and unfettered. It was simply impossible for a cultivator to train like an ordinary army in the secular world. As for the demon race, they were wild and difficult to tame. So how could they easily submit to anyone? Moreover, most of them were loners, so it was even more difficult to tame them. However, Sakura had forcefully turned the impossible into possible. Relying on his own strength and charm, he had fought for such a great situation. He had directly conquered the group of demons spiritually and subdued them, making them fanatical to the point of a kind of belief. Only such a demon race would treat his orders as the most important thing and obey them. Only in this way could he train such an orderly and valiant army. Not bad. The demon lord was silent for a while before he finally spat out a sentence. Although his tone was still very cold, one could hear a trace of great appreciation and praise in his words. To be able to make consecutive breakthroughs in such a short time, the last time I saw him in the 5 Elements Mountain, he was just a small demon with a first transformation demon core. I could easily kill him. Now, it seems that he has reached the 4th transformation demon core, the ancient demon king realm. This potential should be far from the limit. He's a good seedling. The demon lord pondered and said, with his ability, he can manage the barren southern barbarian to such an extent. There are magic tools, magic weapons, spiritual wine, and cultivation methods. Even something that no one dared to do in ancient times, the unification of currency, was achieved step by step under his plan. Tion is not simple. Ding! Unknowingly, a crystal-like demon coin appeared in his hand. It was round on the outside and square on the inside. With a casual pinch, a fingerprint was printed on the demon coin. The demon coin was dented. The demon lord's gaze suddenly deepened, and he said in a deep voice, "The material of this demon coin is extremely strange. It is not in the 5 elements, and it contains traces of incense and wish power. It is so tough that even 70% of my strength can't completely destroy it. It's truly bizarre. Looks like he doesn't need me to nurture him, as he already possesses boundless potential. This Tion is indeed a mighty lord with great talent and bold vision. I didn't notice it before when he was keeping a low profile." The know-it-all smiled meaningfully and said, "This person is also a ruthless person." With a rumor, the whole immortal cultivation world was shaken. He played the people in the world in the palm of his hand. He easily made the demon coins circulate among the demon race by means of temptation. He unified the currency and achieved his goal. It was the level of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. This method is really brilliant. He is not a reckless man. Now, it is time for him to show his ability. This time, the rumor is probably to get a share of the crimson treasure tide in the God-Perish Abyss. In order to avoid being too big a target, he directly stirred up the pool of water. When it's time to make a move, he will make a move. The demon race hasn't had such a wise hero for many years. The know-it-all took out a gourd of spiritual wine and poured it into his mouth. "Demon Lord, all kinds of signs have shown that the annihilation tide in the chaotic world is coming soon." The know-it-all suddenly changed the topic and said, "When the annihilation tide comes, all the cultivators in the heavens and the 100 races will return to the source continent. Even the heaven realm and the demon realm will be no exception. They will inevitably merge with the source continent again and become part of the continent. With the return of the 100 races, I'm afraid there will be an eventful time on the continent. Moreover, when the annihilation tide comes, the source continent and the chaotic world will open a passage to each other. At that time, it will be the beginning of a new great tribulation." There was a sigh in his words. "Humph." The demon lord let out a cold snort and said disdainfully, "The great tribulation is coming. Aren't there human beings in front of it? Let them do it." He spat out those words full of disdain and looked up at the sky. His eyes seemed to be able to see through the void and see the other side of the void. He said coldly, "Back then, when the great tribulation came, the demon race was the first to bear the brunt of it in the ancient times. No less than 30 peerless powerhouses of the demon race spilled blood in the starry sky. They threw their heads, spilled their blood, and used their lives as the price in exchange for the existence of the purple gold continent. How heroic that was! Since the human race want to strike back at the last moment and replace the demon race as the main character of the world, good, very good. There is no eternal main character in the world. This time, it's the human race's turn to taste the consequences of the past." There was still no trace of emotion in his sarcastic words. "What a pity." The know-it-all shook his head and sighed. "There should be some old fellows in the demon realm who haven't fallen. When they return in the future, they should be able to see some old friends. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, another great tribulation is coming. Not to mention that the 2 of them were sighing here. Tion ordered the 4 major legions to practice the battle formation. They transformed into the 4 divine beasts, took all the demon beasts on their backs, and quickly shuttled through the clouds. Their speed was quite fast. However, they didn't fly straight to the 1,000 Beast sect, but flew out of the southern wilderness. They flew forward for thousands of miles. The divine beast, transformed from the battle formation, stopped when Tion waved his hand. Why did they stop? This stop made the demon kings puzzled. Baihu stepped on a ribbon and came to Tion's side and asked with a little doubt. "Huh?" Tion smiled indifferently and said, "When I found the passage in the 1,000 Beast sect and left, wasn't so easy. I set up an illusory door in the hidden place of the 1,000 Beast sect. Since he had decided to do it, how could he not leave 1 or 2 backups? He didn't want to run back and forth to the Thousand Bees sect for 10 days to half a month. Knowing that he had to go back, he naturally left an illusory door near the Thousand Bees sect. At that time, as long as he relied on the power of the illusory door, he could directly travel through the void, cross the boundary of heaven and earth, and appear in the Thousand Beasts sect. It was enough to save a lot of time. D. Shirtion is D. Shirtion. Sure enough, you have considered everything thoroughly, Silverhair said with a faint smile. Presumably, there's also an illusory door here that is connected to the Thousand Beasts sect. Sakura smiled indifferently and looked at the hill in front of him that didn't have any trees. Not to mention trees, there wasn't even a single blade of grass growing on that hill. Both of his hands quickly condensed seals and directly struck towards the hill. Open. Suddenly, the hill collapsed from the middle and strangely disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by an incomparably huge illusory door. The hill just now was just a cover for the illusory door. Rise. Sakura's mind moved, and the illusory door flew into the air. In an instant, it became incomparably huge. The illusory door opened wide, and within the door, there were strange ripples that were like flowing water flashing, creating circles of ripples. It was big enough to allow the 4 sacred beasts to pass through. Through the illusory door, through the void, the group of monsters appeared in the Thousand Beasts sect. Now that the rumors were spreading, D. Shirtion and the others naturally didn't want to expose themselves to the immortal cultivators. Quietly, they passed through the passage and directly entered the Godfall Abyss. However, D. Shirtion didn't notice that the moment they entered the Godfall Abyss in the void, there was nothing in the void but 5 figures appeared. There was actually a huge jade ruler under the feet of these 5 people. This jade ruler was being stepped on by them. There seemed to be a strange power that was constantly being emitted from the jade ruler, causing invisible ripples to appear in the surrounding void. It was as if everything was being shielded from the outside world. Shingong, your divination ability seems to be getting more and more exquisite. You can actually calculate that there will be a major event in the Thousand Beasts sect that is not inferior to the Scarlet Tide Island. We have waited here for a month. TSK. We have indeed gained something. Lan Yu saw the group of monsters enter the passage with her own eyes and laughed strangely. Standing on the jade ruler were Shangong Hu, Lan Yu, and Qing Yuan, who were known as the 3 evils of the Heaven Realm. Behind them were Wu Wudi and Shui Wuan. Shingong Hu accepted it without hesitation and said, "My divination technique is unparalleled in the world. How could it be wrong? With the addition of the Xuanji ruler, the accuracy of my divination is greatly increased. However, I still calculated that there will be an incredible event here." Then he paused, looked at the direction of the passage, and said strangely, "It's just that I didn't expect this to be related to the monster clan. Using a battle formation to condense the 4 sacred beasts? I'm afraid the rumor of the monster clan's decline may not be true." Qing Yuan's eyes flashed with a strong fighting spirit, as if he wanted to find someone to fight. Interesting, really interesting. I have a hunch that we might encounter a lot of interesting things if we follow this group of Monster Clan. I think we should follow them and take a look. Lan Yu laughed strangely. That's good. I'm curious where this passage leads to. Could it be that it leads to the Thousand Beasts realm? Interesting, very interesting. We have waited for a month. If we don't investigate carefully, wouldn't it be a waste of time? Shingong Hu nodded. His Taoist robe fluttered, making him look like an immortal. Together, they went to the passage. It's going to be the spring festival soon. This little brother also needs to go back to his hometown for the new year. Because my hometown is in the countryside, I can't connect to the internet, so I can't update. I need to ask for a vacation for my brothers. My ticket for tomorrow will be renewed after the new year. I hope everyone can understand. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 520. When Shingonghu and the other two were in the heaven realm, they were known as the three evils of the heaven realm. Each of them had their own name. Shingonghu had a strange bad luck. He was almost the embodiment of all evils. Not to mention talking to him. Even if one bumped into him, one would have bad luck for several days. With dark clouds covering his head, he was known as the god of misfortune. Because Qing Yuan was a martial cultivator himself, and a martial cultivator with astonishing strength, he was almost obsessed with martial arts. A martial cultivator's instinct was to fight. His martial skills had to be constantly sharpened in actual combat in order to comprehend the various profound principles contained in martial skills and integrate them into his body. With his obsession with martial arts, ever since he had achieved success in martial arts, he had been fearlessly challenging everywhere. Almost as long as he saw an expert with a high cultivation and unique ability, he would immediately entangle and challenge him. Moreover, even if the other party didn't accept the challenge, he was the kind of person who didn't pay attention to etiquette at all. He would directly go up and attack. When he fought, he was even more unscrupulous. Everyone who was defeated by him didn't have a single intact spot on their body. They were incomparably miserable and only had one breath left in their chest. Along the way, his martial arts could be said to have progressed by leaps and bounds. His behavior had already reached the point where people in the heaven realm would directly hide from him. They gave him the name Martial Madman. As for Lan Yu, his talent was also astonishing. It was said that on the day he was born, from the moment he landed, the originally clear sky outside was immediately covered in snow. 3,000 miles of ice was frozen, and the blood in his body was blue. His blood was even more so. Just a drop of it could turn the ground within 1,000 miles into black ice. Countless terrifying cold qi accumulated in his body. With his physique, cultivating ice and water cultivation techniques was like a fish in water. He advanced by leaps and bounds and easily cultivated to an astonishing level. However, his temperament was both good and evil. When he was in a good mood, he might help an ordinary mortal in the secular world. When he was in a bad mood, even if he encountered an immortal king or an immortal monarch, he would still dare to rush up and throw an ice brick at him. The heaven realm also called him Ice Demon. When these three fellows gathered together, they were like fish in water and birds of a feather flocked together. They almost caused the heaven realm to be restless and gained the title of three evils. However, from the fact that the heaven realm couldn't do anything about their actions, it could be seen that the three of them were not easy to deal with. He landed in front of the passageway and took a quick look around. Shingonghu smiled and said, "It is said that this is the cave that was created when Di Shitian was stabbed into the ground by the ancient giant's finger. It seems that the finger didn't kill him, but instead let him discover some secret. Naturally, there were a large number of restrictions covering the passageway. However, these restrictions could not be hidden from the three pests who had wreaked havoc in the heaven realm for countless years. They could see through the disguise in front of them with a single glance. Let's go. We were just about to go down and join in the fun. If the three of us weren't there, wouldn't it be a lot less fun?" Blue Rain had a strange smile on his face. He looked at the passage below with interest. "Let's go." Qing Yuan didn't waste any words and directly expressed his intention with a single word. The profundity ruler under their feet immediately flew into the tunnel with a swoosh. Moreover, it did not even trigger the restriction outside when it entered the tunnel. It was truly mysterious. At this point, even Di Shitian didn't notice. At this moment, in the sky above Scarlet Tide Island, a golden bridge spanned from one end of the island to the other end. Under the golden bridge, another hazy world was faintly discernible. If one looked carefully, they could see that it was a strange place. That world was filled with a strange aura of death. Gray gas, countless white bones, and rotten swords and magic treasures were piled up everywhere. They were inserted into the ground like a tomb of swords and sabers. It naturally emitted a kind of chilling oppression. Below the golden bridge, countless pairs of eyes stared fixedly at the world suppressed by the golden bridge. Their eyes were filled with uncontrollable greed. On the island, as far as the eye could see, there were already countless figures of all shapes and sizes standing there. Countless cultivators gathered in groups of 3 to 5, and there were still large groups of cultivators rushing over from all directions. Obviously, they were all cultivators who flocked over because of the rumors released by D. Chertion. One had to admit that the original sin of greed was truly terrifying. At this moment, there was a 7-colored cloud floating in the sky above the island. No, it was not a cloud. It was more like an island. It was a huge island formed by 7-colored auspicious clouds gathered together. The size of the island was enough to accommodate millions of cultivators without feeling crowded at all. With the 7-colored cloud surrounding it, it looked even more gorgeous, as if it was the residence of an immortal. On this strange cloud island, there were also all kinds of buildings and pavilions. Rather than calling it an island, it was more like an immortal residence, a palace, or a mobile floating island. On the island, cultivators with restrained divine light and dignified appearances stood on the floating island, exuding a kind of ethereal aura. Inadvertently, a casual look from them had a frightening power that could frighten ordinary cultivators. This kind of power was far beyond that of ordinary cultivators. If one were to observe carefully, one would realize that what was flowing in their bodies was no longer the true origin of ordinary cultivators. Instead, it was dermic power that was purer and of a higher quality than true origin. Dermic power was formed from the true origin in one's body when one's cultivation reached the later stage of the immortal realm and was about to ascend to become an immortal. Those who possessed dermic power were immortals, using dermic power to activate all kinds of spells and dermic treasures. One could usually unleash a terrifying power that was 10 times or even dozens of times stronger than before. On the Cloud Island, the disciples guarding the island all had the same aura. It was obvious that the guards on the island were immortals. On the island, the security was tight. In the Cloud Palace on the Cloud Island, the atmosphere was unusually solemn and oppressive. Humph! In the Cloud Palace, a cold snort kept echoing, and there was an unsuppressible chill in the words. 3,000 years, a total of 3,000 years of planning. With more than half of the resources of the 10 major immortal sects, we spent a lot of energy to create the yin and yang dust formation diagram and the Tai Chi diagram that was used to suppress the formation. We were able to stabilize the God's Fall abyss. Who was it? Who was it that spread the news and caused all the cultivators in the Heaven Realm and the Purple Gold Continent to come to Crimson Tide Island at this moment? Thousands of years of hard work, all gone in one day. I can't take this lying down. There was a kind of terrible anger in the words. Looking at the palace, there are not many people sitting inside, only 10. However, each of them had a kind of supreme majesty that could control countless powers and dye the sky red with a thought. Among them, one sat on the main seat in the center of the palace. His majesty was more intense than the other 9, and there was a kind of strange aura that chilled people's hearts. There was no fluctuation of emotion on him, as if he had no emotions at all. It was as if he had cut off the mortal world and was emotionless. The other 9 sat on the 2 sides, each with a seat. The one who had just spoken was the first middle-aged man on the left. He was wearing a fiery cloud robe, a sun crown, and a fire cloud mark on his forehead. In his eyes, there was a trace of uncontrollable anger rolling. "Investigate." The expressionless young man, sitting in the main hall, raised his eyelids slightly and spat out a word in an unusually calm manner. This one word gave people an irresistible feeling, as if it was an edict of the heavenly Tao. Especially the tone, it was terrifyingly calm, and it chilled people from the bottom of their feet to the heart and lungs. Our Tianji sect's divination technique is unparalleled in the world, and we will take responsibility for this matter. 3,000 years of planning, all gone in one day. If we can't even find out who is behind this, the 10 major immortal sects will lose face in the outer domain. Sitting in the first seat on the right side of the palace was a woman with a veil on her face. Although her face could not be seen, her eyes were like stars, abnormally deep, as if there were endless mysteries hidden in them that could see through everything in the world. It was as if, in her eyes, there was no secret to speak of. That's for the best. The young man in the main hall also nodded and praised. Those who gathered here were naturally not nobodies. They were the leaders of the plot of the fallen god Abyss. It was the joint effort of the purple gold continent and the heaven realm. Since ancient times, when the human race rose, the sects had already existed. They were known as the 10 major immortal sections. Any one of the 10 major immortal sects was a behemoth above all living beings. Their power was so great that it was included in the origin continent and even in the myriad worlds. First of all, among the 10 major immortal sects, the one who was recognized as the strongest was the Supreme Mystery Sect. The strength of the sect was completely above the other 9 major immortal sects because the supreme ancient book in the sect was one of the peerless heavenly books in the world, the heavenly book of Unruffled. There were not many true core disciples in this sect. However, every core disciple cultivated this strange book, the heavenly book of Unruffled. The power of the heavenly book of Unruffled was unquestionable because, among the 6 ancestors of the Tao sect, the supreme Tao ancestor, he cultivated this strange book to reach the peak. He was a peerless powerhouse. The first step to cultivating it was to cut off all emotions so that one could not have the slightest emotional restraint. Not suffering from the 7 emotions and 6 desires, the supreme, unruffled emotions, and wholeheartedly improved in cultivation strength. The speed was the fastest of all the cultivation methods. Moreover, without emotional restraint, there was no scruples in fighting, and its power was unparalleled. In addition to its peripheral forces, the overall strength of the sect could be said to be the well-deserved leader of all the sections. Its status was extremely high, and the second-ranked sect was the Heavenly Secrets sect. Although the strength of this sect could not be said to be strong, it was the most terrifying group of people. Because the cultivation method of this sect was also a rather mysterious book called the Heavenly Secrets Godly Radiating Scripture. This godly radiating scripture was extremely mysterious. Cultivating it, one would have a rather keen sense of the workings of the heavens. It was easier to detect the heavens than ordinary people, and when deducing, it was accompanied by a unique treasure, the godly radiating mirror. It was often able to accurately detect what it wanted to know. Moreover, cultivating the Heavenly Secrets godly radiating scripture to a certain level would allow one to cultivate a mysterious eye technique called the godly radiating eye. Under this eye technique, if the other party did not have any unique skills or treasures to hide, with just a glance, one would be able to see through one's past and even what would happen in the future. Almost most of the secret things could not escape their eyes. How could such a person not be feared, who did not have secrets on them? These secrets that he had deliberately hidden were nothing in the eyes of others, and they could be seen through with a single glance. That feeling could be imagined. Moreover, they knew how to seek good fortune and avoid disaster. This ability brought them countless benefits. When fighting with others, they could even see the flaws in the opponent's spells and battle skills. This showed how terrifying and extraordinary this sect was. Among the 10 great immortal sects, they were ranked second, just below the Supreme Mystery Sect. This was a position that no one dared to challenge. Their ancestor was said to be the celestial maiden of the 6 Taoist ancestors, the celestial maiden of the 4 stars. The third-ranked sect was also extraordinary. It was the Xuanxin sect. It had always taken it as its duty to protect the righteous path. It was extremely ruthless and merciless against those of the unorthodox path, and loved evil as if it were its enemy. Against other races, it was even more so to kill, to preserve the righteous path and protect the human race as the protagonists of the world. Its hands were stained with the blood of countless other races. In addition, the Xuanxin sect's Xuanxin technique was extremely mysterious and powerful. It enjoyed an unparalleled reputation in the myriad of worlds. Every race trembled in fear. In the sect, It was extremely famous for its way of the sword. Its current sect master was the middle-aged man who had previously been filled with anger. He wore a fiery cloud robe and a sun crown on his head. The fourth-ranked sect was the awe-inspiring righteous sect. This sect disciples were all Confucian scholars. They also cultivated the Confucian sect's supreme technique, the Song of Awe-Inspiring Righteous Sect. They cultivated the awe-inspiring righteous sect. Legend had it that when one cultivated to a high level, one could condense a loyal heart iron scroll in one's body. It was extremely mysterious. It was also the sect's supreme instruction to protect the orthodox path. In this sect, the disciples were all shocking talents. They all had great knowledge of the world. It was rumored that the articles they wrote could make ghosts and gods avoid them and the world look askance. In addition, in the secular world, the Confucian sect had always been the mainstream of the imperial court, and its influence was huge. The sect's strength was enough to surpass thousands of other sections. Below them were the Heavenly Sword Valley, Kind Boathouse, Myriad Devil Palace, and Taishu Palace. These four sects were not only in the Zijin continent, but also in the myriad of worlds. They were also unshakable behemoths. Each had its own strong points. These sects occupied 8 places altogether. There were 2 other great immortal sections. One was the Thunder Temple, which was the orthodoxy of the Buddhism sect. They cultivated the Golden Body and the Sarira. Among them, the 3 Buddhas of the Buddhism sect could be considered in the Thunder Temple. Their strength was naturally not to be underestimated. There were countless bodhisattvas and arhats. When they gathered together, their strength was quite huge. The last one was the Starry Hall. They cultivated the Tao of the stars. For the heavenly cycle stars, the Big Dipper, the Southern Dipper, the Crepe Myrtle, the 28 Mansions, the 36 Heavenly Dipper, and the 72 earthly fiends, they gathered the power of the stars. It was said that in their sect, there was the heavenly cycle star formation. Its power was boundless, and it commanded thousands of stars. These were the 10 great immortal sects in the myriad of worlds in the Source Land. They were above countless sects and had a transcendent status. Their strength had long penetrated into the myriad of worlds in the universe. Their roots were deep and had a long history. Every single one of them was an unimaginably powerful existence. Behind them stood the world's top experts. The 10 great immortal sects were behind the incident in the God's Fall abyss this time. They had planned this for thousands of years and spent countless efforts and resources. Now, just when they were about to reap the rewards, it was inexplicably disrupted. How would the 10 great immortal sects react? Face slapping. This was a blatant slap in the face. If they did not get back their face, the 10 great immortal sects would probably become a laughing stock in the myriad of worlds in the future. This joke was too big. With their pride, how could they give up so easily? When Dishur Tian was stirring up the chessboard of the world, he had unknowingly provoked the 10 great immortal sects, the most terrifying and powerful existence. Now, they had already begun to focus their attention on the search. Once they found any clues, they would most likely be met with the most terrifying fury in the world. Under this rage, it was enough to burn everything to ashes. Lunatic D, although you have stirred up this pool of water this time, I'm afraid that there will be all kinds of terrifying dangers accompanying it. The mastermind who could plan for thousands of years and include all the cultivators above the tribulation stage in the various sects must be some powerful existence. If we can't get enough benefits from the million treasures crimson tied this time, it will be very difficult. The future will be very difficult. After entering the abyss, the battle formation formed by the 4 major armies spread out, and the subordinates of the various demon kings followed suit. They were ready to patrol the surroundings and find a place to settle down. At this time, Ming also reminded him worriedly. Although Ming could be considered as an antique and did not know much about many things that had happened since the ancient era, his wisdom was not to be underestimated. During this period of time, Sakura had made a series of moves, and each of them was an extraordinary matter, especially the matter of stirring up the fallen god abyss. The mastermind behind the scenes who could secretly plan to target the myriad treasures Scarlet Tide was certainly an inconceivable existence. Once he was traced back to him through some clues, he was afraid that what would follow would be a torrent of lightning and fire from the other party. With his current strength, the situation would be unprecedentedly dangerous. If he was not careful, he might fall into the abyss. Don't worry, there was a certain confidence in D. Shurtien's words. Although these are a big hidden danger, I'm afraid that we can get the expected benefits from the Crimson Tide and have endless wealth. Build the Demon City first, and these hidden dangers will inevitably be eliminated. Whether it's a tiger or a worm depends on this. Whether it was meat or cabbage, it depended on this. He was already cutting off all means of retreat, staking all his future prospects on this one stroke. Of course, he was also prepared for the worst-case scenario. However, he did not want to take that step until the very last moment. Pass down the order. Use the Mirage Illusory Chi to cover all traces. Rest quietly and wait for the right time. As soon as he gave the order, large tracts of Mirage Illusory Chi rose quickly and drifted away, shrouding tens of millions of demons. Brothers, I'm back from my New Year's vacation. Today's car just arrived home. This chapter was written in the car. I won't lie to you. During this period of time at home, I didn't do anything other than spend some time with my parents to celebrate the Spring Festival. I barely touched the computer. However, Wan Yao's future plans have already been set up in my mind. Next, it should be much smoother and faster. Tomorrow, I will take a day off and maintain 6,000 words. From the day after tomorrow, I will try to update 10,000 words a day to make up for the gap during the holiday. Brothers, the Demon City has been silent for so long. It's time to rise. Push, push, push. Help push it up. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 521. The Mirage Illusory Chi was a technique that Ming had given to D. Shurtian in the past. It could be used to conceal one's presence and change one's appearance. Using the illusory chi extracted from the clouds and mist between heaven and earth, one could change one's aura, form, and appearance. It was very magical. Although it was not a flawless secret technique, it could still be considered a unique secret technique. The power of this secret technique was very special. D. Shurtian did not intend to spread it widely. He only selected some loyal subordinates to cultivate it. The Fox clan had always been famous for their illusory techniques. They had an extraordinary understanding of the Mirage Illusory Chi. This secret technique was taught to the Fox clan. A large number of Fox clan members stood on the peak every day, inhaling and exhaling the clouds and mist. They absorbed the essence of the clouds and mist, condensing the Mirage Illusory Chi and storing it in the 100 Treasures Gourd, which was specially used to store the Illusory Chi. The Mirage Illusory Chi just now was released from the 100 Treasures Gourd that the Fox clan members wore. The enormous Mirage Illusory Chi was very magical. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a huge cloud of mist and dissipated into the void, covering the huge demon army in front of them. The 4 armies under D. Shurtian's command were lined up neatly. They were as disciplined as the most elite army in the mortal world. They had received orders in advance. As soon as they stopped, they immediately began to set up camp in a well-trained manner. They closed their eyes and rested, waiting for orders to come. The demon army brought by the other demon kings was scattered on the surface. However, after entering the legendary God's Fall Abyss, one of the 9 great forbidden grounds, their hearts were tense, so they secretly accumulated their strength. They were waiting for the right time. The ground is covered with white bones. Broken soldiers are everywhere. It's desolate and oppressive. The God's Fall Abyss is still the original God's Fall Abyss. After arranging the large group of Fox clan members from Green Hill, Baihu and Su Tianxiang glanced around and walked lightly toward D. Shurtian. There was a touch of inexplicable emotion in her mouth, as if she was reminiscing. The God's Fall Abyss contains infinite soldier spirits. If a small number of creatures enter, as long as they don't touch them and don't covet the infinite treasures on the treasure bowl and the money tree, they won't be disturbed. This time, the mirage illusory chi is really magical. Sure, Tian, you have changed a lot over the years. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe that such a peerless genius like you really exists in the world. Sure Tian's every move and action, up to today, whether it was his cultivation realm or his own power, it made the white fox, who knew his roots, feel like she was in a dream. Genius. He was really too much of a genius. It was said that in the ancient times, there were also such geniuses who were born with great luck, had countless adventures, countless treasures, and unlimited potential. They cut through all obstacles and climbed to the top of the world. Moreover, there were many of them. After all, the luck of the world never favored one person. However, the ancient times were the golden age of cultivation in the purple gold mainland and the source world. There were countless rare treasures, abundant power of the world, and countless cultivation methods. There were many peerless geniuses and thousands of outstanding people coexisted. It was a paradise for cultivation, so it was not surprising to have such a terrifying cultivation speed. However, until now, the opening of the heavens and realms had directly divided the power of the world and the source world. As a result, the power of the world in the purple gold mainland was many times thinner than it was in the ancient times. It was only about 1/10 of what it was in the ancient times. In such an environment, the cultivation speed would naturally slow down. Naturally, it was difficult for an exception like Sure Tian not to attract attention. In this world, there are only two words, the law of the jungle. Sure Tian said with a hint of coldness, "If I don't want to be killed and trampled on, I have to become stronger. I have to have an indestructible will. Become stronger. Become stronger. Become stronger. I'm not strong enough." His eyes were filled with determination. That was his belief. That was his indestructible will. Behind his eyes, there was something he wanted to protect, and all of this was built on strength. Crack! He clenched his fist and said in a low voice, "I'm not strong enough, so I have to keep moving forward. Only when I'm strong enough can I have dignity and not be humiliated by any existence. Only then can I protect everything that is worth protecting, climb the peak of the world, be immortal, and exist forever." This was Sure Tian's will, an indestructible will. This was also his undying motivation for cultivation. Anything that dared to stand his way could only be killed. Kill, kill, kill a path of thorns. Protect, Bai Hu's eyes flashed with a strange light. She said casually, "I wonder if Tian Xiang is in your list of protection?" This seemingly casual sentence contained a strange sense of concern and nervousness in the depths of her scattered eyes. He actually attached great importance to it. Sure Tian suddenly fell silent. No expression could be seen on his face, making it impossible to figure out what he was thinking. TSK, Tian Fa, Tian Xiang, to be honest, I don't want to disturb the two of you at this time, but at this moment, an evil voice suddenly interrupted, breaking the silent atmosphere. The blood WIRM king glanced back and forth between Sure Tian and Bai Hu with a gaze full of ambiguity. He said with a strange smile, "Boss Shui and a few other brothers just discussed and decided to go to the depths of the abyss to investigate the situation of the treasure basin and the money tree. They asked me to come over and inform you. I didn't mean to ruin your tenderness and sweetness." His words were full of embarrassment and apology, but looking at his ambiguous gaze, there was not the slightest bit of apology. Instead, it was more of a kind of ridicule. "Oomph." Bai Hu rolled her eyes in disdain. She snorted and turned to where the Rock Demon King and the others were. "Treasure base and money tree?" Sure Tian slowly exhaled in his heart. He looked at the blood WIRM King and said, "These two are the rarest natural spirit treasures in the world. They can attract countless treasures. They are located in the depths of the abyss. There should still be some time before the myriad treasures Scarlet Tide. We can have time to admire these two treasures." They nodded and did not object. Under the cover of the mirage, the demon's demonic aura was restrained and would not leak out. Moreover, most of them were conserving their energy to refine treasures. There was also the inescapable net that was refined by the silk spat out by Patriarch Tian's silkworm and old monster Huangquan. Most of the demons were familiarizing themselves with this miraculous treasure. When the time came, they could use the inescapable net to gain endless benefits from the Scarlet Tide. Now, as kings, they had nothing to do. They could take this opportunity to see the legendary treasure basin and money tree. It could also broaden their knowledge, broaden their horizons. Tisk TSK. Go, you must go. Treasure basins and money trees are the most special pre-world spirit treasures. They won't attack anyone. Besides, they're the most magical pre-world spirit treasures. If you're destined to be with them, you'll have a great fortune. Perhaps you'll be blessed. Shouted Dark, unwilling to be left out. 1 or 2 treasures will be given to you. Then you will really be rich. Money tree. That was the name of the wish tree and the blessing tree. With your luck, I'm afraid you will have an unexpected harvest. At the side, Ming instigated without hiding anything. The wish tree and the blessing tree, all natural spiritual treasures had their own spirituality. The money tree could gather thousands of treasures, but it was also a kind of magical tree. As long as one stood in front of it and had great luck or had a connection with one of the treasures on the tree, the money tree would bestow that treasure to the person without needing to pick it up. Moreover, the treasure would not have the aura of the money tree or the treasure basin, so the lucky one could take the treasure out of the God's Fall abyss without being stopped by the soldier's soul. This kind of thing set off the miraculous power of the money tree. But unfortunately, since the ancient times, there were numerous experts that came to the treasure basin and money tree. Yet those that were truly able to obtain great fortune and be bestowed with precious treasures were merely less than 10 cases, and they could be counted on one's fingers. It was extremely rare. Now, it seemed even more illusory. Those who could be bestowed with treasures by the money tree were all peerless geniuses with great luck. They would not have that kind of hope every few people. Bestowed with treasures? Di Shirtian's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. This was indeed the only chance to obtain the treasures on the treasure basin and the money tree. Otherwise, even a peerless expert would not dare to touch the treasures. If those powerful soldier souls were provoked, even a peerless expert might not be able to withstand them. Well, now I'm poor, and I only have the source of life left. I don't even have a few decent magic treasures. I used all of them to make divine crystals to build the demon city. This time, I came to the God's Fall abyss to make a fortune. I'm going to see the richest man in the world. Indra didn't have any expectations regarding the bestowal of treasures. However, his interest in seeing the treasure bowl and money tree wasn't ordinary. These 2 spiritual treasures have been standing here for countless of years, absorbing the treasures of various worlds. All these years, they only entered and didn't leave. To say that they were the number 1 money bags in the world was absolutely not just in name, but also in reality. In the blink of an eye, Di Shirtian led the 8 demon kings straight to the depths of the God's Fall abyss. Under the cover of the mirage, they did not reveal any aura. Silently, he shuttled through the air. They quickly sneaked away. Among the 8 great demon kings, only the white fox was lucky enough to stumble upon an entrance to the abyss. She entered the abyss and saw the treasure bowl and the money tree. She was mesmerized by the endless treasures and could not help but pluck a treasure from the tree, which was the imperial heavenly treasure box. In the end, she was chased and fled with serious injuries. Fortunately, she survived. None of the other demon kings had entered the abyss. After all, the 9 forbidden lands are not places that anyone could enter and leave at will. Their curiosity was no less than that of the secular mortals. With Baihu leading the way, they quickly approached the treasure basin and the money tree. Drifting has returned. Where are my brothers? To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 522. If there were too many of them, the impact would be huge. Naturally, even with the mirage's illusory chi, it would be hard to avoid triggering the slumbering soldiers' souls. However, there were only 8 demon kings and Sakura. Each of them was a top-notch expert of the demon race. When they moved, they were as fast as lightning, traversing the void like flickering lights and passing shadows. There was nothing on them that attracted the soldier spirits. It was extremely peaceful along the way. In the abyss, there was endless strange fog everywhere. The atmosphere inside was silent and terrifying like a land of death. It made people shudder naturally. It was extremely oppressive and terrifying. In addition, Tion and the others did not make a sound. When they moved, there was an inexplicable, strange atmosphere. Tion, when they were getting closer and closer to the abyss, a divine thought appeared in Tion's mind. There was a sense of caution in the voice. It was by who? The treasure basin and money tree are in front. However, when you see them, you must be vigilant and calm your mind. There are treasures gathered there. Even the ancient giants will not be able to resist the temptation and will be tempted by the treasures to pick the treasures. Once you can't resist and pick any of the treasures, you will immediately be hunted down by the soldier spirits. Baihu was still worried and said, there was a trace of fear in her voice. She had experienced it personally in the past. Huff! Tion took a deep breath and calmed his mind. He said, I cultivate the supreme way of the emperor and have the peerless book, Huangji, shocking the world. With the tyrant heart mantra in the book to protect my mind, the power of 7 emotions and 6 desires could not confuse my mind. I believe that this time will not be an exception. In a dangerous place, who could compare to the power of desire? As the 8 monster kings, since they knew that the treasure basin and money tree were not to be seen by ordinary people, they still dared to come. With their identity, they must have incredible trump cards or even supernatural powers. They should be able to resist the temptation of the boundless treasures. Here, after a while, they crossed hundreds of thousands of miles and entered the abyss. They stopped in front of a black giant peak that was as tall as 10,000 blades. Baihu looked at Heishan with a complicated expression, took a deep breath and said, is this where the treasure bowl and money tree are? The rock demon king looked at the black mountain peak in astonishment. It was 10,000 feet tall and pierced through the clouds. He couldn't see its peak at first glance. However, there wasn't a single blade of grass growing on the peak. It was gray and gloomy, as if it was a barren mountain. It did not seem to have any unique aura, nor was there anything strange about it. It was just a barren mountain. Such a barren mountain was not something rare in the purple gold mainland. This is a mountain, not a treasure bowl or a money tree. Sister Baihu, did you make a mistake? The blood WRM king glanced at the black peak and didn't find anything strange. At this moment, King of Nightmare's silver eyes revealed a hint of contemplation. He walked forward and stretched out his left hand, reaching towards the mountain peak. Poof! When his palm came into contact with the mountain peak didn't have the slightest bit of hardness. It was like an illusory stream of water. His palm easily reached into the mountain peak, and a strange sound echoed in the air. It was as if the mountain peak was illusory and didn't exist at all. It's actually an illusion that can pass for reality. A hint of disbelief appeared in Silverhair's eyes. When he put his hand in, he originally thought that he would touch the mountain peak. However, he didn't expect that the mountain peak was actually an illusory object. It didn't exist. It was just a miraculous illusion that could pass for reality. It was so miraculous that even the aura of the earth and rocks of the mountain peak could be transformed. As a result, these monster kings were unable to see through it at first glance. What a miraculous illusion. Could this be evolved by the treasure bowl and money tree? The ancient demon tree king's eyes were full of vicissitudes as he glanced at the illusion of the mountain peak. He couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. It seems that the treasure bowl and money tree are hidden in this illusion. If we pass through, we can see the legendary innate spirit treasure, the golden-winged bat king said with some excitement. 4 innate spirit treasures. Those who could obtain them by luck were all powerhouses with great fortune. For others, it was a supreme blessing to be able to take a look at them. To be able to see such a treasure with their own eyes, it was still difficult to calm down. They looked at each other. Tian and the others stepped through the illusion at the same time. Swoosh! Swoosh! The moment they passed through the illusion, Tian and the other demon kings only felt that there was a burst of dazzling light in front of them without any warning. The light radiated in all directions. Each ray of light had a strange majesty with a miraculous power that pierced into their eyes. For a moment, in the dim world of the God's Fall abyss, they felt like they couldn't open their eyes. They couldn't help but close them one by one. Dazzling light. Boundless, dazzling light. A dazzling light that could directly pierce people's eyes and blind them. This wasn't the light of gold and silver treasures, but the light of precious treasures. This kind of light had a natural majesty that came from precious treasures. Ordinary people couldn't even look at it. If they did, their eyes would be directly blinded by the light. Precious treasures weren't something that just anyone could easily see. If you didn't have the strength, if you wanted to see it, your eyes would be pierced blind first. My goodness, is this still a basin? This is a mountain, a treasure mountain piled up by endless treasures. Heart of the profound wood, living soil of the 9 heavens, heart of ice, dragon tendons, dragon veins, dragon horns. Treasures, all of them are treasures. The blood WYRM king couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. His eyes suddenly widened as he stared straight ahead. TSK, TSK. The treasure basin gathered endless treasures. That basin was already filled to the brim. When it was piled up, it directly became a huge treasure mountain that was thousands of feet high. F*CK. This tree is 222 F** King Spectacular. Source of life, source of the world, immortal peach, immortal apricot, sky-piercing divine spear, golden battle shield, demon slayer blood dagger, chaotic heaven trident, coiling dragon demon slaying halberd, clear vase, purple gold gourd, yin yang samsara disc. All of them are precious treasures they're hard to find in the world, and they're all growing on trees. They're my fingertips and my fingertips. But F** King Hell, I don't dare to pick them. The whiskers around the sky-devouring Rat King's mouth stood up one by one. His eyes had been completely replaced by the light of treasures. As he called out the names of the various treasures, he let out miserable howls. A tree, a 10,000 feet tall divine tree that radiated boundless light, directly pierced its roots into the treasure mountain that was thousands of feet tall in the middle of the treasure basin. It towered so high that it blotted out the sky and split open the sun. Countless branches and leaves spread out in all directions. These branches and leaves were tough and indestructible, and the leaves glittered with golden light. The aura of treasures filled the air. On the branches of the tree hung countless incomparably precious treasures, and spirit essences. On each branch hung no less than 1,000 treasures. These treasures were like fruits, growing roots that connected to the branches, as if they were naturally growing on the tree. There were all kinds of treasures. A stalk of grass grew from the branches. Don't be afraid, that's the resurrection grass. It bore fruit. TSK, that's the 9 sons' fruit. It grew a gourd vine. Oh my, 7 gourd brothers grew on it. There were so many rare treasures that it was impossible to count them all. Even their eyes were dazzled. If anyone could shake it, the treasures that fell from the tree could directly smash a peerless expert to death. Perhaps no one would be able to imagine the shock of witnessing the greatest treasure trove in the world with their own eyes, even from the moment they were born. No matter who it was, even if they were a peerless expert, they would be so ashamed that they would find a hole to hide in. Compared to what was before them, the peerless expert was a F** King pauper, a bumpkin. Roar! In the nether prison, Dark howled and cried out in grief. There were countless treasures in front of me, but I couldn't truly possess them. This is the most painful thing in the world. If the heavens give me a chance, I will say to them, fly into my Chinkoan bag. If I have to put a limit on the treasures, I hope it can be 10 million of them. Treasures, so many treasures. This treasure basin and money tree is indeed the richest man in the world. If I can get 1/10, no, 1/100th of the treasures here, I'll be able to make a fortune. Madman D, you can immediately become the second richest man in the world, richer than even a peerless expert. The myriad demon city can also be easily forged with infinite power. What a pity. It's so unattainable. This is the most painful thing in the world. Ming felt an incomparable heartache as she gazed at the boundless treasures that were within her reach, yet unreachable. The conflict in her heart was truly indescribable. Hegemonic heart, I am the emperor. Nothing can stop me. Treasures are like floating clouds to me. Nonsense. I am the emperor. Why can't I have these boundless treasures? When Sakura saw those shocking and inexhaustible treasures, his eyes were almost unable to open due to the illumination of the boundless treasures. When he saw those boundless treasures clearly, he was unable to completely resist the most fundamental temptation. His mind was somewhat shaken. He hurriedly chanted the Tyrant Heart Sutra, thinking of himself as an unparalleled emperor overlooking the world with his might. Although he managed to keep his mind, there was still an indescribable sense of defeat in his mind. He cultivated the Tao of the emperor and accepted everything in the world. Why couldn't he have the greatest treasure in the world? Treasures are like floating clouds to me? Floating clouds, my ass. The emperor's heart was the most domineering. Possessiveness was also the most intense. The feeling of being able to see something but not have it was really unbearable. At this moment, a pure jade hand suddenly lifted up and stretched out towards one of the branches of the money tree that was full of seeds. With a raise of the hand, it was about to pluck the seeds. When Tian saw this, he was shocked. He hurriedly looked over and saw that the owner of the fair hand was Bai Hu. At this moment, Tian Xiang's eyes seemed to only be focused on the seeds. Her fair hand unwaveringly reached out. Source of the world? Source of life? Tian Xiang. How could Tian not know that Bai Hu was bewitched by the treasures and wanted to pluck them? Although the treasures were good, once they were plucked, they would immediately attract the attention of countless soldiers. When that happened, it would cause a huge commotion and attract the attention of the human experts suppressing the Godfall abyss. All of their plans would be wasted in an instant. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 523. The endless treasures would tempt even the most powerful cultivators. The light of the treasures could directly penetrate the eyes and shoot into the mind. The kind of terrifying temptation was almost immeasurable. If one could obtain the source of the world and the source of life, they would be able to open up and evolve a small world that belonged to them, an inner world. It would lay a solid foundation for becoming a powerful cultivator. This kind of temptation, no matter how high one's cultivation was difficult to resist. Bai Hu was once tempted by the endless treasures in the past. She could not help but pluck the imperial heavenly treasure box from the money tree. Now, standing in front of the treasure bowl and the money tree again, her heart was shaken again. She could not help but stretch out her jade-like hand and reach forward to pluck the treasures, the source of the world and even the source of life. Not only her, but even the Blood Dragon King and the other monster kings gradually showed a strong sense of fanaticism in front of the almost endless treasures in the world. A strong sense of possessiveness constantly emerged from the depths of their hearts. They could not let Tian Xiang and the others pluck the treasures. Otherwise, the big plan that they had painstakingly set up would be destroyed on the spot and attract the attention of the human cultivators. All their plans would be in vain. Not to mention the shocking benefits in the myriad treasure Crimson Tide, they would not even be able to keep their lives and would be hunted endlessly. Up in the sky and down in the earth, the monster race would be in danger of being exterminated. Ja. Countless thoughts flashed through Di Shirtian's mind. No matter what, he must not touch the treasures in front of him at this moment. In a flash, his eyes focused, and he opened his mouth to shout. The power of the Tyrant Heart technique turned into an invisible force in this shout and directly poured into the monster palaces of all the monster kings, shaking the bewitched minds of the monsters. This shout was like the reprimand of an emperor. It had supreme majesty. With Di Shirtian's current cultivation, if this shout were to spread, no matter who it was, within a radius of 10,000 miles, they would involuntarily kneel down and worship the emperor. Their minds would be shaken. It would shock the mind. And this shout was directly poured into their bodies with the power of the primordial spirit. In their minds, it was as if there were thousands of thunderbolts roaring. Yes, a muffled groan escaped from Baihu's mouth. The bodies of the demons trembled violently, as if they had been struck by lightning. A trace of clarity vaguely appeared in their eyes, which were still bewitched by the treasure light. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead like fine wine. All of their faces were pale, and they looked dispirited. How terrifying! Under Di Shirtian's shocking reprimand, Baihu's originally bewitched state of mind recovered in the blink of an eye. Her mind became clear again, but her body was already covered in a layer of cold sweat. She looked at the jade-like hand that had already reached out in the air with lingering fear. The white, jade-like finger had already reached the source seed of the world. The distance between the fingertip and the source seed was less than a sliver. As long as he was willing, he could easily pluck the source seed into his hand with just a thought. However, at this moment, when Baihu looked at the source seed, it was as if she had seen a terrifying venomous snake. She quickly retracted her hand at lightning speed. Her heart was filled with lingering fear. She smiled bitterly and said, "Precious treasures bewitch the heart. Precious treasures bewitch the heart." I didn't expect that I would still be unable to guard my heart when facing countless precious treasures again. I almost made a huge mistake. I ruined such a good situation. Sister Baihu, precious treasures bewitch the heart, but it is the best place to cultivate the heart. If you can use the temptation of the countless precious treasures in front of you to cultivate your heart state, you will definitely be able to advance by leaps and bounds. This is a great opportunity. The silver-haired man's eyes flickered with wisdom as he spoke decisively. That's right. With the countless precious treasures in front of you as a cauldron, you will be able to contend with the boundless desires in your heart. Your heart state will definitely become stronger at an unimaginable speed. This is a place where treasures gather, and at the same time, it is also a rare place to comprehend the Tao. This is a great opportunity. The demonic rock king couldn't hide the excitement in his eyes as he softly shouted, "Bodhi treasure tree, help me comprehend the Tao." The demonic rock king wore a scholar's brocade robe. His robe was white as snow, and the feather fan in his hand fluttered in the wind. He looked like a weak scholar, but at this moment, his body was brimming with boundless confidence. Treasure light burst forth from his body, and an inexplicable vast aura was emitted from his body. The treasure light above his head shot straight into the clouds. Under the gaze of Di Shirtian and the others, a Bodhi treasured tree, glowing with crystal light, quickly emerged from his body. This Bodhi treasured tree was only 10 feet tall. Its entire body was translucent like a crystal. There were 9 branches on the tree, and the leaves on the branches were very strange. They looked like human palms with 5 fingers. These palms were all different, and they formed countless strange hand seals. It was as if changes were happening at every moment. It contained the mysteries of heaven and earth. It was connected to the great Tao of heaven and earth. It was obscure and had a profound aura. If one looked closely, they would be able to see the truth of heaven and earth and thousands of great Taos. If they could comprehend it, their cultivation would be greatly improved, and there would be endless benefits. Enlightenment of the great Tao. Brothers, please ascend the Bodhi treasure tree. With the protection of the Bodhi treasure tree and the ability to comprehend the great Tao, you can borrow the charm of the endless treasures to strengthen the power of your state of mind. Comprehend the truth of heaven and earth and increase your cultivation level. The great demon realm is just around the corner. This kind of opportunity is hard to find in the world. The Bodhi treasure tree emerged from the demonic rock king's body. In the blink of an eye, he placed it in front of him and lovingly stroked it. He turned his head to greet Silverhair and the other demon kings. He also flew directly to the tallest branch of the Bodhi treasure tree and sat cross-legged on it. He looked at the unparalleled treasures on the treasure basin and the money tree. There seemed to be boundless charm in those treasures. The treasure light shone into his mind, and his mind was shaken. The impulse to take the treasures in front of him into his arms uncontrollably emerged again. However, at the same time, the countless leaves on the Bodhi treasure tree below him rustled and danced. Waves of treasure light emitted a divine splendor, covering the demonic rock king sitting on the branch. Immediately, a tranquil power constantly wafted out, comforting his mind and maintaining the last bit of clarity in his mind. He was not charmed. A mysterious aura surrounded his body, and he vaguely entered a wonderful state. His state of mind was constantly rising as he resisted the desire. Haha, it's boss's Bodhi treasure tree. It's wonderful. The Bodhi treasure tree is a great spiritual root in heaven and earth. It's magical and can help one comprehend the truth of heaven and earth and eliminate all evil. This is a great opportunity. With the help of the Bodhi treasure tree, the great demon realm is just around the corner. Spiritual power is easy to cultivate, but it's hard to increase your cultivation level. Just this point alone makes this trip to the Godfall abyss worthwhile. When the golden-winged flying bat king saw this, his eyes involuntarily lit up. He was overjoyed and did not hesitate at all. He hurriedly flew toward the treasure tree. If I can obtain this opportunity to reach the great demon realm, it'll be as easy as taking something out of my pocket. Maybe even a demon saint will not be out of my reach. This kind of opportunity will not come again if I miss it. Silverhair's eyes, which seemed to be able to see through everything in the world, also showed traces of surprise. At this moment, he flew up the Bodhi treasure tree without hesitation. All the demon kings knew that they might not encounter this kind of opportunity again in their lifetime. This was truly a great opportunity. It was true that the Bodhi treasure tree could help people gain enlightenment, but the price to pay was that the power stored in the treasure tree would be depleted completely. It would take at least a few thousand years of accumulation to unleash its mysterious power again. Therefore, such an opportunity might not come again. After this time, the Bodhi treasure tree would also be silent. It would not be able to unleash the mysterious power of enlightenment again. Naturally, they would not miss such a great opportunity. They all flew up and sat cross-legged on a branch of the Bodhi treasure tree. In the blink of an eye, 8 of the 9 branches on the treasure tree were occupied. There was still one more. Naturally, it was for D. Shirtion. Opportunity, a great opportunity. The Bodhi treasure tree. I never thought that such a treasure would fall into the hands of a group of demon kings who were considered as ants in the ancient times. Moreover, there are endless treasures to help cultivate the heart and comprehend the Tao. If the Bodhi treasure tree's power of enlightenment is unleashed to the limit, one's body will be limitlessly close to the rules of heaven and earth. This is the best time to comprehend the mysteries of the great Tao. There's also a chance to comprehend unparalleled remarkable powers and mysterious techniques, and find a Tao that belongs to oneself. Perfect one's own techniques and create a supreme scripture. Ming could not help but howl when he saw the Bodhi treasure tree. His eyes shone brightly as he shouted, "Lunatic D, your Huangji shocking world scripture is a supreme imperial art. Although you've read countless cultivation techniques, you are limited by your cultivation level. You can't completely deduce them, and the cultivation technique is incomplete. Now, with the help of the Bodhi treasure tree, your mind will be limitlessly close to the great Tao of heaven and earth. You should be able to comprehend boundless laws and complete the Emperor Tao wondrous book. This is an opportunity, an unparalleled opportunity. Emperor Shocking World Book could be said to be the foundation of Sakura's cultivation. Unfortunately, when he created it, his cultivation level was too low, and his cultivation level was even lower. He could not comprehend the supreme great Tao of heaven and earth. There were 3,000 great Taos in heaven and earth, and one of them was the Emperor Tao. This Emperor Tao was something he could not reach back then. He also did not have the comprehension of an emperor. Combined with the power of desire, this wondrous book could be called an unparalleled wondrous book. When cultivated to a certain level, it was enough to deduce the Emperor Tao to its peak, or even surpass it and become a Tao of its own. Over the years, while cultivating, he had been constantly perfecting this book. However, this was all based on the continuous improvement of his cultivation level. Under normal circumstances, to completely perfect this peerless technique, it would take at least thousands or even tens of thousands of years to comprehend the great Tao. Only then could it be completed and truly become a peerless, wondrous book. However, the Bodhi treasure tree in front of him was an unparalleled opportunity that would allow him to perfect the Emperor's Shocking World Book in the shortest time possible. There is hope for the Emperor's Shocking World Book to be completely perfected. Indra's gaze towards the Bodhi treasured tree flickered with a fiery radiance. Boundless joy surfaced in his heart. However, he forcefully suppressed it in an instant. He shifted his gaze away from the Bodhi treasure tree and looked towards the money tree. However, before that, I want to test if this king and this money tree are fated to be. If I enter a treasure mountain and return empty-handed, I will not feel at ease no matter what. First update has arrived. There's still 2 more updates. When I said 3, it must be 3. No matter how late it is, there will definitely be 3. Brothers, if you have tickets, please help me. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 5:24. Yes, yes, yes. Now all the monster kings are comprehending the Tao on the Bodhi tree. They're using the power of the Bodhi tree to resist their inner demons and desires. They want to use this opportunity to improve their realms and their understanding of the Tao of heaven and earth. This will pave the way for them to become great monsters in the future. Put all your focus on comprehending the Tao and don't have time for anything else. Now is the best time for you to try your luck under the money tree. Quick, quick, quick. Go under the money tree and shake it hard. If you are fated, you will be able to shake this supreme treasure. When the tree vibrates, treasures will fall. If you can't shake it, it means you're not fated. Hurry up and go up the Bodhi tree to comprehend the Tao and perfect the Emperor Shocking World Book. That is the most important thing. Money tree, money tree. The reason why it was called a money tree was because the opportunities of the money tree had to be obtained by shaking it. If one was lucky enough to stand under the tree and use their hands to shake this towering tree, then even if one didn't have the strength to truss a chicken, they would still be able to move this supreme treasure. If not, then even if one was a peerless expert with peerless strength, they wouldn't be able to move this money tree in the slightest. Money tree, shake it, and thousands of treasures will fall. All right, how can I leave empty-handed after entering a treasure mountain? Destiny is on my side. What is providence? Providence is confidence. Tian looked at the huge money tree with a determined gaze. He walked to the bottom of the tree steadily and looked at the thick tree trunk. It was like a towering pillar that pierced the clouds. It stood there with an unshakable aura. However, there was no change in his eyes. He said in his heart, I will shake the money tree. Buzz. With a firm belief, Sakura stretched out his hand and placed it on the huge tree trunk. He didn't use much strength and just pushed the money tree a little. Suddenly, a strange rumbling sound came from the tree. The moment his right hand touched the money tree, he felt a strange an obscure power coming from the money tree. It quickly flowed along his arm and entered his body. In an instant, it circulated around his body as if it was searching for something. Then, this mysterious force quickly returned to the tree trunk. Whoosh! The instant they returned, the towering money tree that was filled with countless treasures that had never moved for tens of thousands of years suddenly seemed to be swept by a gale. Countless leaves rustled and fluttered in the wind. The myriad of treasures swayed and emitted waves of dazzling light. With a rustling sound, it seemed like they would fall off the tree at any moment. Fate, it's really a great blessing. This money tree is actually reacting to it. Drop, 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 drop quickly. Legend has it that when the money tree shakes, more than one treasure will fall from it. But many. I'm rich. I'm really rich. The treasures hanging on the money tree must be the rarest in the world. Any one of them is an unimaginable opportunity. Look, a treasure is falling. Catch it quickly. In another prison, Dark shouted excitedly. Suddenly, he saw a treasure light falling from the tree. After this treasure light, 2 more treasure lights followed closely behind. Then, the constantly trembling money tree strangely calmed down. The originally violently shaking tree suddenly calmed down. Good, good, good. When Sakura saw this, he was overjoyed. He didn't even think about it. With a move of his mind, the surrounding heaven and earth energy suddenly gathered and instantly transformed into a huge palm. He grabbed the 3 treasures on the spot and wanted to take the 3 treasures into his arms. His eyes were burning, and thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind. He was guessing what the treasures in the 3 treasures light were. He was excited, as if he had seen the treasures fall into his hands with his own eyes. However, something strange happened in an instant. Fellow Taoist, please stop. The treasures belong to the virtuous. In my opinion, you seem to be lacking in virtue. You are not the owner of the treasures. My virtue is unparalleled, and I am the destined owner of the treasures. Since we are fated, why don't you give them to me? Just as Tian's huge hand was about to grab the 3 treasures light, a calm voice suddenly came from midair. There was a familiar charm in the voice. A huge ruler suddenly appeared in midair, exuding a mysterious aura. It slammed straight at the palm from afar. Divine light burst out from the ruler, and it hit the palm hard. Bang! That palm was merely something Sakura casually condensed. Who would have thought that in this place, there would actually be someone who dared to snatch the treasure away? The palm didn't contain much energy, and after being smacked by the jade ruler, a thunderous boom rang out. The palm was unable to withstand the terrifying might, and with a speed visible to the naked eye, it was disintegrated inch by inch. It was broken into pieces. It broke down. TSK. Shungong, why are you saying so much? This time, we are really lucky to be able to see the treasures that fell from the money tree. These treasures must be rare in the world. The treasures belong to the virtuous. What is virtuous? Virtuous is strength. With our strength, we are virtuous. An unhurried voice sounded. Essence palm. Capture. In the void, there was an intense cold chi. This cold chi was extremely overbearing. As soon as it appeared, it condensed countless terrifying ice crystals in the void. It seemed as if the surrounding space was going to be completely frozen and sealed. This cold air did not spread in all directions. Instead, it gathered together and quickly condensed into a large, icy blue hand in midair. As soon as this large, icy hand appeared, it immediately suppressed the void. A terrifying aura swept through the world. The vibrating void completely showed waves of terrifying distortions. A vast power suddenly suppressed all directions. It was as if this large hand could easily shatter the vacuum with a move. It grabbed at the 3 rays of light from afar. Don't underestimate this little demon. He's a guy who dares to compete with the ancient giants, the venerables. If we want to snatch it, I'm afraid he may not agree. A mocking voice echoed. At the same time, there was a fluctuation in the void, and 5 figures emerged from the void without warning. Upon closer inspection, one could see that these 5 figures were none other than the 3 evils of heaven who followed them here. Shengong Hu, Lan Yu, Qing Yuan, Wu Wudi, and Shui Wuan. They had followed them all the way here and had seen everything that had happened before. When the Bodhi treasure tree appeared, they already had the intention to attack. Unfortunately, when they saw the demonic rock monarch activate the power of the Bodhi treasure tree, they realized that it was almost irreversible. Under the protection of the Bodhi treasure tree, the people inside wouldn't suffer any injuries or attacks. Even an unparalleled expert would find it difficult to break through the power of the treasure tree. Moreover, even if they managed to snatch it, they would have to wait for another few thousand years before they could use it again. Therefore, they could only endure for now, until they saw that Di Tian was actually able to shake the legendary money tree and obtain a treasure. Looking at the 3 rays of light descending from the sky, how could they, who were known as the 3 evils of heaven, let go of it? They even impolitely made a move on the spot to snatch the 3 treasures. F*CK, Shengong Hu, the 3 evils of heaven. You want to steal my opportunity? When Di Tian saw this, he felt as if his liver and guts were about to burst. He let out a roar and would not retreat. How could he allow others to touch the treasures that he had shaken off? So what if you're the 3 evils of heaven? So what if you're Jinx? You dare to steal my treasures? Even if it's the heavens, I will poke a big hole in it. Heaven's punishment divine eye, 5-colored divine light. Di Tian did not hesitate. With a thought, the purple vertical mark between his eyebrows instantly opened. A vast pressure spread out like a tide, suppressing the void. In the hell prison within the divine eye, the 5 elements plate emitted bursts of divine light and began to spin. It contained endless mysteries. On the plate, a mysterious and unique world faintly appeared. The power of the 5 elements was entrenched. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The moment the heavenly punishment divine eye opened, a beam of purple divine light shot out. This divine light, at the same time it shot out, instantly split into 4 divine lights that suppressed all 4 directions. They were yellow, green, blue, and red. The 4 divine lights fanned out like a fan. Each beam of divine light contained the purest origins of the 5 elements in the world. The 5-colored divine light lacked one of the 5 elements, but it did not prevent it from displaying its heaven-defying power. As the divine light brushed past, as long as it was within the 5 elements, whether it was a human, a living creature, or any treasure, it would be restrained by the divine light. With a brush, it could brush into the space opened up by the 5-color divine light, which was also the 5 elements plate. The 5-color divine light, whether it was used to brush people or things, was the sharpest and most terrifying supernatural power in the world. As soon as the divine light came out, it immediately showed a fan shape and quickly brushed towards the 3 treasures in the void. The divine light was as fast as lightning. 2 of them brushed towards the ice essence palm in midair, and the other 2 brushed toward the treasures that were falling down. So what if you're one of the 3 evils of the heaven realm? Today, whoever dares to steal my treasures will be my enemy. I even dare to fight with an ancient giant. Who am I afraid of? Shengong Hu, don't think that I'm afraid of you just because you have some strange evil power and bad luck. Normally, I'll give you some leeway, but if you want to steal my treasures, I won't give you any face. Di Shiyan's heart was cold. The anger in his heart was soaring, but it could not affect his mind at this moment. He was calm and cold. The first move was the heaven-defying supernatural power of the 5-color divine light. The divine light swept across the sky, and wherever it passed, strange ripples appeared in the void. Lan Yu, be careful. The 5-color divine light is the heaven-defying supernatural power of the Peacock clan, the 5-color divine light. As long as it's within the 5 elements, almost everything can be brushed by the divine light. This supernatural power is invincible. Qing Yuan's eyes were filled with astonishment. However, at the same time, a strong battle intent surged out from him. Looking at Tian, there was a sudden blazing light in his eyes. The second update has arrived. Please vote and subscribe. I will start writing the third chapter immediately. It may be a little late, but it will definitely be there. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 525. Qing Yuan's words were fast, but they were not as fast as the five-color divine light. A golden divine light and a scarlet divine light were imprinted on the ice soul great palm. The golden divine light was incomparably sharp and indestructible. The golden divine light was like the sharpest divine sword in the world. It swept through the air and brushed against the ice soul great palm. Immediately, the golden origin energy in the divine light burst forth with unparalleled offensive power. It swept over the ice soul palm as easily as crushing dry weeds. However, the ice soul palm was so powerful that it suppressed the world. The ice soul palm contained the most terrifying, mysterious ice power in the world. Under the divine light, it did not shatter on the spot. However, the cold light began to dim. Then, the crimson divine light followed and brushed against the ice soul palm. This ray of divine light contained the essence of fire. It contained the most violent power of fire. It was incomparably violent, and it was the opposite of ice. They were two extremes. When they collided, a terrifying rumbling sound was heard. The giant hand was annihilated by the two rays of divine light. Sky-splitting divine claw, tear the void apart. Qing Yuan shouted. A strong fighting spirit surged from his body. He only reached out his right hand and waved at the three divine lights. Suddenly, a sharp tearing sound was heard in the air. With a sizzling sound, a claw shadow completely tore the void in front of him. Countless cracks appeared as it sharply grabbed at the treasures. It fiercely attacked the divine light. Sky-splitting divine claw was a martial arts technique. When it was cultivated to a high level, it could even tear the sky apart. This claw had the terrifying power to destroy everything in its path. When it collided with the five-color divine light, it blocked the green divine light on the spot. At the same time, the three rays of light continued to descend in a straight line. From the moment he crushed the ice soul great palm to the moment he clashed with Qing Yuan, everything happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. During this intense battle, a horsetail whisk appeared. The 3,000 strands of the horsetail whisk strangely became incomparably long as they swept towards the three treasures, wanting to take them away. However, an icy blue divine light broke through the air and swept toward the three treasures. Boom! Boom! The divine light spread all over the sky. It swept past, and not only did it want to sweep away the three treasures, it also wanted to sweep that horsetail whisk into the divine light. What was strange was that when the divine light fell on the horsetail whisk, a strange power appeared in the horsetail whisk, which resisted the divine light and prevented it from falling. Seizing this opportunity, the horsetail whisk tore through the air and swept up the two treasures before leaving in the blink of an eye. Only one treasure was struck down by the divine light. Qingyuan Lanyu, let's go. Fellow Taoist, we'll meet again. Shengong, who caught the horsetail whisk, and with a wave of his long sleeves, he wrapped air bow in his sleeves. His face still had that lukewarm look. He smiled meaningfully at Sakura and suddenly called out to Qing Yuan and Li Mu. You have many unique innate techniques, and your combat prowess isn't weak. However, compared to me, the difference is still too great. Although your potential is extremely great, you better hurry up and increase your cultivation. If not, the next time I see you, I won't be able to hold myself back and fight you. If you fail to satisfy me, I will personally kill you. Qing Yin restrained the battle intent on his body and spat out a sentence to Tian with an inexplicable charm. Obviously, he had aroused his battle intent, and his martial fanatic nature was surging. He was almost about to experience Sure Tian's innate techniques. However, it seemed that he didn't want to fight with him at this time when the difference in strength was too great. 5-color divine light? Interesting. However, it's a pity that this heaven-defying innate technique is not perfect. With your cultivation, there is no way to display the true power of this innate technique. Otherwise, it would really make me a little afraid. Interesting, let's see how far you can grow. Lan Yu said with a smile that was not a smile. Lan Yu shook his head gently. After speaking, the heavenly realm's 3 evils took the 2 and disappeared strangely like when they appeared. Kacha, Sakura coldly stared at them as they disappeared. On his 2 fists, the veins popped out as he cracked his knuckles, making a terrifying sound. His nails pierced into his flesh, causing traces of blood to flow out. He gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke on the spot. The heavenly realm's 3 evils. He almost squeezed out these words from between his teeth. As he spoke, a cold aura spread out, and his eyes flickered with anger. 2 of his 3 treasures had been taken away by the heavenly realm's 3 evils. This was simply a slap in the face. Humiliation. Extraordinary humiliation. The anger in his chest almost ignited his entire body on the spot. Great humiliation. Extraordinary humiliation. This was directly trampling on his dignity. Strength. All of this was because of strength. I want strength. Sure Tian took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed this anger. The humiliation just now was deeply engraved in his mind. This matter would not be forgotten just like that. Crazy D, those 3 fellows are all experts who are only a foot away from the ancient giants. Their strength is indeed too weak compared to yours. However, if you can build the 1,000 Demon City, it will be enough to suppress those 3 fellows to death. After a moment of silence, Ming spoke. Seeing that the treasures had been taken away, he was also furious. However, with his ability, he could not help much. Even if he chased after them now, he would only be asking for humiliation. Build the city, build the city. I must build an unbreakable 1,000 Demon City. Sure Tian's eyes flickered with a threatening light as he made up his mind. He deeply remembered this humiliation in his heart and took a deep breath. His eyes gradually regained their clarity. With a wave of his hand, a light flashed in his hand. Immediately, one of the 3 treasures that had been brushed away by the divine light appeared in front of him. As soon as it appeared, he could not help but be stunned. This is the treasure? He looked at the thing in front of him in disbelief. That treasure was not a magic weapon at all, nor did it have any boundless power. It was just a small sapling that was less than half the height of a person and less than a meter tall. This sapling looked quite ordinary on the surface, as if it was most of the ordinary saplings in the world. There was nothing strange about it. Simple and ordinary. Was this a treasure? This was simply a tree, and it was just a small sapling of a tree that couldn't be identified. Oh my God! All of a sudden, Dark burst into a howl and said crazily, "This money tree is indeed the richest man in the world since the beginning of time. The treasures it drops are indeed the legendary treasures that are hard to find in the world. There is even a connate spiritual root, and it is one of the legendary 10 great spiritual roots, the peach tree of immortality. This must be the peach tree of immortality. However, how can it be a sapling and not an adult tree? Peach tree of immortality, peach tree of immortality. This is the aura of a connate spiritual root. There is no doubt about it. It must be the peach tree of immortality, one of the legendary 10 great spiritual roots. Fortune, a one-of-a-kind fortune. Crazy D, you are rich. You are really rich this time, with this sapling of the peach tree of immortality. As long as you get the living soil of 9 heavens in the future and let it grow, you will have one of the 10 great spiritual roots. This must be the mother tree. In the future, when it bears fruit and the first batch of peach seeds is planted, you will have a new peach tree of immortality. Although the new peach tree of immortality is not as good as the mother tree, it is still extraordinary. There will be a second batch and a third batch. They will all have incomparably magical power. With it, you will have an endless supply of wealth. It is a treasure that cannot be obtained even if you beg for it. Dark laughed wildly. Apart from a mother tree, the peach tree of immortality could be planted 3 times, and it would become a spiritual root. However, with each planting, the effect would weaken. But it was still a rare spiritual fruit. It was a supreme treasure. What a treasure! Ian's eyes lit up. The peach tree of immortality was something that left a deep impression on him. In his previous life, the peach tree of immortality was a supreme treasure in the heavens. It could be said to be the supreme treasure of the heavenly court. The Feast of Immortality Peaches was a famous grand event in the world. When he heard that, he thought to himself, innate spiritual root, could it be comparable to the peach tree of immortality in the journey to the west? He still clearly remembered that in the journey to the west, there were 3 types of peach trees in the peach garden, and there were a total of 3,600 of them. The first 1,200 peach trees had small flowers and fruits, and they ripened once every 3,000 years. If one ate them, they would become immortals and become lighter. The second 1,200 peach trees had a layer of sweet flowers, and they ripened once every 6,000 years. If one ate them, they would become immortal. The last 1,200 peach trees had a purple pattern, and they ripened once every 9,000 years. If one ate them, they would live as long as the heavens and the earth, and the sun and the moon would be the same age. No matter what kind of peach tree of immortality it was an extraordinary treasure. Looking at the peach tree of immortality in front of him, he was secretly excited. This was indeed an extraordinary treasure. Once it matured, he would have an endless supply of wealth. However, when he thought about it, he couldn't help but feel angry again. He had already obtained a treasure, and he couldn't even imagine the benefits. There were also the other 2 treasures that fell at the same time. They might not be any less precious than the peach tree of immortality. Strength. Everything depends on strength. If I had a strong cultivation, how could the 3 pests of the heavenly court have taken away my treasure? Tian thought to himself. However, he quickly put away the peach tree of immortality carefully and sent it directly into the exquisite pagoda. In the exquisite pagoda, Chunchi had already received the news. He immediately took the peach tree of immortality peaches and planted it in the jade lake. After doing this, he didn't have any more worries. He jumped up the precious Bodhi tree that stood not far away and sat on the last branch. As soon as he went up, he felt the magical power of the precious Bodhi tree. The aura that calmed one's mind directly soothed the anger in the depths of one's heart. For a moment, he felt that the rules of heaven and earth, which were originally very obscure, were very clear and close at this moment. He could easily comprehend a lot of principles. Good, good, good. The precious Bodhi tree of immortality peaches is indeed a supreme treasure. Obtaining the power of the precious tree of immortality peaches is very helpful for me to deduce cultivation techniques. This should be a great opportunity for me to complete the Imperial Book of Shocking the World. Tian was secretly overjoyed. He quickly closed his eyes and started to cultivate. In his mind, there was a boundless sea of consciousness. In the sea of consciousness, there was a book that was filled with a noble aura. Although it's a little late, the 3rd watch has been delivered. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. I support the author. I support the original reading. Chapter 5:26. This book shone with a noble purple gold light, and a few ancient and mysterious words appeared. Book of Imperial Shocking the World. When the Book of Imperial Shocking the World was cultivated to a high level, it could condense into a magical book in one's body. This book contained the Supreme Emperor's Tao, and any understanding of the Emperor's Tao would be gathered in this heavenly book. It was still rather illusory now, But once the Emperor's Tao was cultivated to the extreme, it would be able to completely condense into a physical body. It would become an incomparably magical treasure. As Di Tian was the creator of this book, it was his destiny to deduce the Emperor's Tao, and he had already condensed it into this book. However, there were only 4 complete volumes in the book. Each of these 4 volumes corresponded to a realm in the demonic cultivator realm. The first volume was for demonic cultivators with first transformation demonic cores to cultivate, while the 4th volume was for demonic emperors with 4th transformation demonic cores to cultivate. Currently, Di Tian was an ancient demon king with a 4th transformation demon core. What he was cultivating now was the 4th volume of the Book of Imperial Shocking the World. Absorb the power of desire that belonged to anger. Opening acupoints. Every opening was a breakthrough. Once 9 acupoints were opened on the 4th demon vein, it meant that the 4th volume of the Book of Imperial Shocking the World had been cultivated to the extreme. It was also when the 4th transformation demon core reached its peak and was about to break through to the 5th transformation demon core. This was the most complete of the 4 volumes that he had deduced before. As for the remaining 9 volumes, they were all incomplete. Those were prepared to wait until the 4th volume was cultivated. Then, he would use his own understanding of the cultivation technique, the power of desire, and the Supreme Emperor's Tao to continue perfecting the 5th volume of the cultivation technique. Then break through to the 5th transformation demon core. The Emperor's Tao was the strongest and most domineering Tao. The title of Lone Man meant that I was alone. Other than myself, I could give up anything. The Emperor's Tao was domineering. In heaven and earth, I was the only one. Those who disobeyed, kill. 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 The Emperor's Tao was the strongest. It stood above thousands of living beings and controlled the operation of the universe. A word could be the law of the world, and a rage could cause rivers of blood to form. The Bodhi treasure tree lived up to its name as the Path Understanding treasure tree. Its wonders attracted more attention than any other natural treasure. Legend had it that since the birth of the Source Continent, there had been a total of 9 Bodhi treasure trees. Each one was a supreme treasure of the world. The power it absorbed was not the power of the world, but the comprehension of the great Tao, the comprehension of the realms, the principles of the world, and the power of the great Tao. Once it was used, it would allow the person on the Bodhi treasure tree to get closer to the ethereal rules, principles, and boundless great Tao. In the midst of this, he allowed his mind to wander freely through the heavenly Tao and seek his own great Tao. In the process of swimming, one's own realm did not need to deliberately cultivate it all. It could automatically increase at an inconceivable speed. This was a treasure that even peerless experts would be envious of. He didn't know where the Rock Demon King had obtained it from. However, this opportunity was the most practical. Legend had it that if one could gather all 9 Bodhi treasure trees, something incredible would happen. One could transcend the boundaries of the world and reach an unimaginable realm. After obtaining the Bodhi treasure tree's power from the Bodhi treasure tree, Di Tian felt that his mind had been sublimated without any warning. He had been brought into an incredible world. Around his mind, countless rules, principles, and great Tao constantly flashed past his body. In the blink of an eye, he could capture them. With the power of his mind, he condensed his mind and continuously absorbed the power of those rules and principles. He comprehended the boundless great Tao Chi and absorbed it into his mind and body. This allowed his realm to sublimate and transform at a speed visible to the naked eye. Moreover, according to each person's nature and cultivation method, the great Tao and principles that each person's primordial spirit could comprehend were different. Each person could only absorb the great Tao information that corresponded to their own primordial spirit. There was no need to think about a complete great Tao. What one could absorb were only fragments. Even so, this was still a supreme opportunity that ordinary experts didn't even dare to think about. When Di Tian cultivated the Emperor's Tao, the first thing he comprehended was the great Tao fragments related to the Emperor's Tao. Threads of great Tao proverbs that belonged to the Emperor's Tao constantly entered his mind. They converged. They constantly reverberated. Every time they reverberated, he would gain new insights. At the same time, this endless Emperor's Tao information was constantly combined with the essence of the countless cultivation methods that he had read in the past. They were integrated into the Imperial Book of Shocking the World. His deduction of cultivation methods suddenly entered an incomparably smooth state. I opened 9 apertures. 9 is the limit. 9 apertures is the limit that each demon meridian can bear. Every time I open an aperture, my body's potential will undergo a transformation. This is the Imperial True Aperture. However, the Imperial True Aperture can only truly increase my body's potential, strengthen my demon body, and increase my strength by refining and storing power in the apertures. Every true aperture can house a deity. When a deity is formed, the deity can continuously absorb the vast power in the void to strengthen himself and temper his physical body. When attacking, he can form a Dharma form and apply the power to himself, erupting with unparalleled power. In the past, I only opened the apertures, but I didn't fully display the mysteries of the apertures. I didn't form a Dharma form in the apertures. This won't do. I have to perfect it. I cultivate the Emperor's Tao. The dragon Qi is the symbol of the Emperor's Tao. I can absorb the dragon Qi in the dragon meridian, integrate the power of desire between heaven and earth, and form a Dharma form that belongs to me. I use the power of desire as the foundation of my cultivation, integrate it with the Emperor's Tao. I can break through the 7 emotions and 6 desires and not be held back by lust. I can be the Emperor and rule the world. Di Shurtian's mind was filled with countless cultivation techniques, constantly absorbing their essence and integrating them with the fragments of the great Tao that he obtained from the void. His understanding of the Emperor's Tao rose in a straight line. At the same time, with his understanding of the power of desire, the incomplete cultivation techniques from the 4th volume onwards were deduced smoothly. The incomplete cultivation techniques gradually became more complete. In addition to his understanding of various cultivation techniques, he gradually had a mature idea of how to open the apertures. He also understood that the true purpose of the apertures was to form a Dharma form. Immersed in his enlightenment, he didn't seem to notice the passage of time. On the Bodhi treasure tree, time passed in the blink of an eye. However, in the midst of enlightenment, it felt like thousands of years had passed in a flash. It was truly amazing. However, one could also see that on the surface of the Bodhi treasure tree, the glazed treasure light was fading at a speed visible to the naked eye, rapidly dimming. At this rate, the Bodhi treasure tree would become completely dim in less than 2 to 4 hours, without any luster. In an instant, time passed. Rays of light flowed on the faces of the 9 monster kings sitting cross-legged on the Bodhi treasure tree. Their auras underwent a drastic transformation. Obviously, each of them had gained immeasurable benefits. Their realms were rising rapidly. This was especially so for Di Shurtian. The deduction of the Imperial Book of Shocking World was progressing smoothly. From the 5th volume onwards, it was like riding the wind and breaking the waves. He continued to deduce the incomplete cultivation techniques until they were complete. Scroll after scroll, he used the countless cultivation methods in his mind as a medium to absorb the essence within. Along the way, he actually managed to completely deduce the 9th scroll like a hot knife through butter. Boom, boom, boom. While Di Shurtian was deducing the cultivation techniques, in the sky above the purple gold continent, and even in the heavens and realms, countless dark thunderclouds rolled out from the void without any warning. In an instant, the entire sky was covered. Heaven and earth suddenly became pitch black. Countless terrifying, colorful lightning bolts danced wildly like wild snakes, cutting through the void. A vast amount of pressure filled the entire area. Howl, howl, howl. At the same time, countless wails of ghosts and gods soared into the sky. Even the lightning couldn't cover up the screams. For a moment, the earth quaked and the mountains shook. This was a heavenly omen. 10,000 bolts of lightning, wails of ghosts and gods. This is a heavenly omen. Who is it? Who can cause a heavenly omen? Countless experts looked up at the terrifying heavenly omen. A vast pressure descended, causing countless living beings to involuntarily kneel, as if they were welcoming the arrival of some inconceivable object. In the underworld, countless malicious ghosts seemed to have gone mad. They let out agonizing howls as they tore at the chains. They were in so much pain that they wished they were dead. This kind of heavenly omen has appeared once in the early years. Whenever it appears, it usually means that some kind of earth-shattering natural spiritual treasure is about to be born, or even a supreme cultivation method that can surpass the laws of the world has been created. Could it be that some peerless book is about to descend? Some experts thought to themselves, no, this aura is almost exactly the same as the heavenly omen from back then. Could it be? For a moment, countless powerful divine consciousnesses broke through the void and rushed into the heavenly omen. They wanted to capture the obscure aura within and find the source of the heavenly omen in one fell swoop. However, at the same time, the thunderclouds that filled the sky suddenly disappeared just as they appeared. The cries of ghosts and gods in the air also subsided. In the Godfall abyss, the glazed light emitted by the Bodhi treasured tree mysteriously disappeared. The mysterious aura from the tree also disappeared without a trace. There wasn't the slightest bit of power in the tree. It was just like an ordinary glazed tree. The Bodhi treasure tree is indeed worthy of being called the tree of enlightenment. My cultivation level has risen to the peak of the great demon realm. There are no more bottlenecks between the demon king and the great demon realm. As long as I have enough power, I can break through the thorns and ascend to the great demon realm. Once I reach the peak of the great demon realm, there will be no more bottlenecks to speak of. It really is a supreme treasure. The blood WYRM king opened his eyes, which were sparkling with excitement. In an instant, he could clearly feel that his mental state had reached the peak of the great demon realm. Although he was still an ancient demon king, there were no obstacles between him and the great demon realm. I should have just returned after the new year. I went out with my friends today and only just returned. My head is a bit dizzy from drinking. I quickly uploaded the chapter 1 finished this morning and went to work on the second chapter. The third chapter may not be available today, but I'll continue tomorrow. Everyone, give me some encouragement. To be continued. If you want to know the rest, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 5:27. In other words, as long as one had enough power, one could reach the 5th refinement stage, 6th refinement stage, 7th refinement stage, and 8th refinement stage, all the way to the peak of the greater demon realm, and the 9th refinement stage, all the way to the 9th refinement stage, would not be a problem. As the saying went, cultivation was easy to obtain, but cultivation was difficult to cultivate. Once cultivation increased, spiritual power was only a small problem. Once one was stuck at a bottleneck, one could be stuck for thousands or even tens of thousands of years without any progress. The Bodhi tree was indeed the tree of enlightenment. This is great. The barriers between the different realms have completely disappeared. Our cultivation has increased greatly. Becoming a great demon general is no longer a problem. The foundation we laid this time gives us the potential to become demon saints. Baihu opened her beautiful eyes and shouted excitedly. Once the energy of the Bodhi treasure tree was depleted, the demon king's comprehension of the heavenly Tao naturally ended in an instant. They all woke up one after another. However, there was one thing that was similar. Their cultivation levels had increased by leaps and bounds. They had all reached the peak of the greater demon realm. Although they only had realms and didn't have the strength to match their realms, cultivation was only a matter of time. To them, time was nothing. Thank you, Boss Snow, for your help. Silver Hair slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and turned to thank Demon King Peng. If it weren't for this Bodhi tree, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to reach this level without thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years. If we have any achievements in the future, it's all thanks to this enlightenment. This was an opportunity, but it was so great that it was unimaginable. Once they reached a certain level, it would be a matter of course for the 8 great demon kings to become great demons. Even breaking through to become a demon saint would no longer be an unattainable dream. Just think about it. At this moment, no one would be able to truly calm their hearts. However, the one who benefited the most was Dishurtion. When the various demon kings opened their eyes and sobered up, Indra also opened his eyes. However, in his eyes, there wasn't any excitement. Instead, there was a trace of pity in his eyes. It is a shame that only the 9th volume of the shocking Book of the King has been developed. The other 4 volumes are still incomplete. I am afraid I will not be able to have such a great opportunity in the future. Dishurtion sighed in his heart. However, this feeling of pity only lingered for a moment before he discarded it. The Book of the Shocking Huangji was too heaven-defying. It combined the power of desire and the Emperor's way into one. It was an unparalleled book. Even with the power of the Bodhi treasure tree, he could only deduce up to the 9th volume. If he continued on, it would not be able to help him. The 10th volume had an obscure power that prevented him from truly deduce it. It was as if reaching the 9th scroll was the limit of this deduction. Even so, to be able to deduce so many cultivation techniques in such a short period of time and perfect them all the way to the 9th transformation of the Yaodan, there was almost no problem with the cultivation technique's flaws. He even deduced the Tao of Dharma of the acupoints. Once a Dharma idol was formed, one's strength would rise to an unimaginable level. The benefits he would gain were already immeasurable. The rock demon monarch jumped down from the tree and stood in front of it. He looked at the Bodhi tree that no longer had any luster and waved his hand to put it away. He gently fanned himself with his feather fan and smiled. Once the Bodhi tree is used, it cannot be stopped. It would be too wasteful to monopolize such a great opportunity. Brothers, it is worth it to be able to benefit you all. After all, the demon race now only has a few of us supporting it. If we do not unite, the day of extinction will not be far away. I can feel that in the near future, there will be a change that will sweep across the entire universe. The silver-haired man muttered to himself as he looked into the void. Yes, I have the same feeling. Countless of my descendants, and I can feel that between heaven and earth, there seems to be an inexplicable power that is about to sweep across. Along with it, there will definitely be a huge change. The ancient demon tree king's old voice also sounded. There seemed to be a bad premonition in his words. Let's go. Let's go back first. We should not stay here for long. After that, all the monster kings nodded in agreement. They quickly left the treasure basin and money tree. This was the #1 land of treasures in the world. The temptation of these countless treasures was too strong. It was too difficult to resist. They were all afraid that if they stayed here for too long, they would not be able to resist taking the treasures above and attract the soldiers' souls to chase after them. That would be really bad. Damn it. Passing through the illusion, Dishurtion could not help but feel a sense of anger in his heart again. In his mind, the 3 pests of the heaven realm came across the sky and took away 2 treasures with their own hands in front of him. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't completely suppress his anger. Just thinking about it made him angry. Return to the demon camp. Not to mention waiting for the arrival of the 1,000,000-treasure Crimson Tide. However, Dishurtion's deduction of the Imperial Book of Shocking World was too shocking. It triggered a heavenly omen, causing endless lightning and ghosts to cry and gods to howl. This movement shook the underworld on the spot. In the underworld, ghosts were the most numerous. Once they howled, the movement was too terrifying. It shook the underworld. Speaking of the underworld, it was not a small place. It was different from those worlds that were born by the great magicians, or even the heavens and earth, but attached to the source continent. The place where it was located was a world that was born at the same time as the source continent. However, in the source continent, and even in the myriad worlds, most of the living creatures were living creatures. However, in the underworld, almost all living creatures were ghosts, evil spirits, and the like. Since ancient times, there had been a legend that the land of the 6 paths of reincarnation was in the underworld. It was the place where the reincarnation of the myriad worlds was ruled. In the world, as long as the soul imprint in the body was still intact and undamaged, after death, the soul would leave the body and transform into a ghost. It would be guided into the underworld and become a ghost. In the underworld, it would become a ghost. The ghost would absorb the netherworld energy that was everywhere in the underworld and be able to solidify its body. It would become stronger. In the underworld, ghosts did not necessarily need to enter the 6 paths of reincarnation to be reincarnated. They could also cultivate in the underworld and become ghost cultivators. Similarly, ghost cultivators could also become stronger. In the underworld, there were many powerhouses who were not willing to be reincarnated. Even if they became ghost cultivators, they still had a unique advantage and cultivated very quickly. There were many powerhouses, and there were many peerless powerhouses born among them. In the underworld, there were also forces that existed. Among them, the largest sect was naturally the underworld sect. However, below it was the netherworld ghost sect. The netherworld ghost sect was so powerful that it almost covered the entire underworld. In the sect, there were many talented ghost cultivators. There were countless powerhouses. Almost all the ghost cultivators in the underworld respected the netherworld ghost sect. The location of the sect was the netherworld ghost region. At this moment, in the netherworld ghost region, there was a towering mountain. At the peak of the mountain, there were 2 figures wearing the same black robes. If one were to take a closer look, one would realize that these 2 figures were not simple at all. One of them was actually wearing a strange, pitch-black mask that completely covered his face. His eyes were flickering with ghostly flames. The other figure looked very young. He was only about 18 years old, but his face had a cold expression. There was not the slightest bit of immaturity in his eyes. There was only indifference. He stood quietly, but his figure was somewhat petite. He did not seem like a man, but more like a woman. There was a strange feeling. On his left shoulder, there was an ancient lamp. This lamp was incomparably black, but it had a jade-like luster. Traces of black light emitted from it, giving off a sinister and cold aura. Its style was similar to the palace lanterns of ancient times. The heart of the lamp was a green flame. If one looked closely, in the heart of the lamp, there seemed to be countless ghosts struggling and praying. Vaguely, an inexplicable aura was emitted from the lamp. The strangest thing was that the lamp seemed to have grown out of the young man's shoulder. Xianming, you should have understood the task given to you in this trip to the human world. The strange masked man suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a sentence in a hoarse and unpleasant voice. His voice carried harsh words, and within those harsh words, there seemed to be a wisp of imperceptible concern. Master, don't worry. Xianming already knows. The first reason for leaving the underworld is to deal with the matter of the fallen god Abyss. The second reason is to find the powerhouse who created the Peerless Book. The third reason is to travel and increase my experience. The fourth reason is to find the mystery of the netherworld ghost lamp on me. I have already remembered it, the young man called Xianming said respectfully. As he spoke, he glanced sideways at the ancient lamp on his shoulder. The flame in the ancient lamp flickered slightly, as if it was greeting him. The faint light from the lamp comforted his body. Yes. The strange masked man nodded and said, "It's good that you remember. You can go now. If you are in danger, the ancient lamp on your shoulder will protect you." "Yes, master. I will take my leave." Xianming replied, bowed, and left. Sigh. Seeing Xianming leave, the strange masked man didn't leave. He just stood there quietly. Suddenly, he sighed deeply and said, my disciple, I don't know whether it was right or wrong to let you leave the underworld this time. You are a person with destiny. As soon as you came to the underworld, you were born with a strange appearance. There's an ancient lamp on your shoulder. This lamp is your guardian deity. I am afraid it is also the source of your responsibility and disaster." He shook his head and sighed again. Then he flashed and disappeared. The underworld coexisted with the source continent. Its location was actually under the source continent. Naturally, there was a passage connecting the two worlds to go back and forth. To be continued. If you want to know the rest, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. I support the author. I support the original reading. Chapter 528. There were many such passages, but traveling between the two worlds wasn't something an ordinary expert could do. Every passage was guarded by an expert. It was especially difficult for the cultivators of the source continent to enter the underworld. Usually, only the various great factions of the underworld would guard this place. On the other hand, there weren't many people in the origin continent or even the myriad realms that would guard this place wholeheartedly. It wasn't that they didn't care, but the passage itself had a very famous name in the universe. In the underworld, it was called the Nether Spring. Outside the underworld, it was called the extreme Een Crypt. It was where the mysterious Een gathered. It was connected to the underworld, and there was a large amount of nether chi gushing out at every moment. The chi of a netherworld was not a terrifying thing to the ghosts, dead spirits, and zombies of the underworld. Instead, it was very beneficial to their cultivation. Cultivating in the netherworld spring would allow them to achieve twice the results with half the effort, allowing them to advance 1,000 miles in a day. However, this was only relative to the evil spirits. For living creatures, if they did not cultivate a unique cultivation method, the dense chi of the netherworld within the netherworld spring would endlessly erode their bodies if they wanted to enter the netherworld spring. If they couldn't resist, they would eventually become the servants of the nether spring. Their minds would be eroded, and they would lose their consciousness. They would only know how to attack all living beings that entered the nether spring. Therefore, aside from those cultivators with special cultivation methods, ordinary cultivators wouldn't pay much attention to the nether spring. The number of such cultivators wasn't small. At this moment, in a netherworld spring, a pitch-black figure was leisurely strolling along the street. He walked forward at a steady pace. The netherworld ghost lamp on his shoulder lit up the pitch-black world around him. As the lamp hung on his body, the surrounding dense netherworld aura was endlessly devoured by the ancient lamp. As it devoured the nether chi, the lamp also released a strange, purer energy that poured into the mysterious underworld. TSK, TSK. As he walked forward, pairs of eyes that were suffused with a dark green glow gathered towards him. Waves of strange and terrifying cries continuously reverberated in this quiet space. It made people's hair stand on end. Under the illumination of the lights, the owners of those eyes continuously appeared. They were monsters with two strange horns on their heads, and their eyes emitted a cold and ruthless light. Netherworld servant? Xianming lifted his eyes to look at them and said indifferently. Then, he didn't even want to waste the slightest bit of time on his expression and continued to walk forward. The ancient lamp on his shoulder suddenly emitted a strong light. As soon as the light appeared, the light that was previously restricted to a radius of 10 meters suddenly expanded to a radius of 300 meters. Under the illumination of the ancient lamp, the netherworld servants that were originally hidden in the darkness revealed themselves one after another. In an instant, a strange power was emitted from the ancient lamp. It landed on the bodies of the netherworld servants. Those nether servants didn't even have the slightest ability to resist. Under the illumination of the ancient lamp, they mysteriously turned into powder, and the souls in their bodies were sucked into the heart of the ancient lamp like swallows returning to their nest. He was so relaxed that it was hard to believe. Along the way, there was nothing that could stop Xianming. He leisurely shuttled through the spring of the netherworld, crossing the boundary between two worlds. The myriad treasure Scarlet Tide is about to begin. The 10 great sects are using their means to control the myriad treasure Scarlet Tide. They want to seize the endless treasures in the Scarlet Tide. However, if the news is leaked, it will definitely attract the attention of 10,000 worlds. There must be many forces hiding in the dark who want to get a share of the loot. If they want to seize the treasures in the Scarlet Tide, they must use extraordinary means. In an ancient, gloomy cave, Xianming was standing in front of a giant spring. Rolling netherworld qi was gushing out from the spring. At this moment, he was no longer in the underworld. He was now in an unknown place in the purple gold mainland. Xianming waved his hand to hide the ancient lamp on his shoulder. He pondered and said, "This time, I came out of the underworld to increase my knowledge. Because of the 10,000 treasures, Scarlet Tide, a storm is brewing in the purple gold continent. I don't know how many forces are spying on us. When the Scarlet Tide appears, I can see with my own eyes the countless means of 10,000 worlds." After thinking for a while, he made a decision in his heart. His figure flashed and disappeared from the cave. His guess was not the least bit exaggerated. The myriad treasure Scarlet Tide was something that even peerless powerhouses did not dare to get involved in easily. Once they were involved in the Scarlet Tide and encountered the weapon spirits, it would be the biggest disaster. Under such circumstances, it was time to show the real shocking means to get the treasures from the Scarlet Tide. Ordinary means could not get the benefits in the Scarlet Tide. Only great magical powers, supreme treasures, powerful ancient formations, and so on could have the chance to seize the benefits in the Scarlet Tide. At that time, all the hidden forces and all kinds of shocking magical powers would be revealed. At that time, it would be wonderful. The myriad treasure Scarlet Tide was first stirred up by Di Shirtian, causing the entire cultivation world to crazily rush to the Scarlet Tide Island. As the origin continent, the violet gold continent was the center of the universe. It was the origin of the universe, so the universe would naturally place their eyes and ears on the continent. Through these eyes and ears, the universe would immediately learn about the myriad treasure Scarlet Tide when such an earth-shattering event occurred on the continent. At this moment, the Scarlet Tide Island seemed to be peaceful. In fact, in the 10,000 worlds, all the forces and even the powerhouses were secretly watching. They were just waiting for the right time to take action. Di Shirtian's rumor was not only beneficial to him, but it had also attracted the attention of countless forces. In the god-perishing abyss, under the cover of the illusory chi of the towering sea mirage, the 10,000 monsters did not disturb even a single weapon spirit. The monsters were all waiting quietly under the control of their respective monster kings. After the monster kings obtained the great opportunity of the Bodhi treasure tree, they seized every minute to practice their cultivation techniques, absorb the power of heaven and earth, and accumulate their monster chi and dermic powers. With the help of their cultivation realm, their cultivation speed was almost 1,000 miles in a day. The amount of spiritual chi of heaven and earth was so huge that it was terrifying. Almost every one of them had a strange spiritual chi vortex around them. A huge amount of spiritual chi flowed into their bodies continuously. In the middle of the vortex, their faces were filled with joy. Treasure light glowed. However, at this moment, Di Shirtian was not here. He was entering the exquisite pagoda. In the first heaven of the pagoda, a large number of monsters who had not yet transformed were working hard to absorb the power of heaven and earth and diligently cultivating. Di Shirtian directly entered the second heaven. As soon as he entered, he heard a burst of lively noise. Quick, quick, quick! Hurry up and move the wind copper ores over and put them into the exquisite 7 orifices pot. Divine crystals. We have to refine the divine crystals as soon as possible. We are relying on them to build the 1,000-demon city. No matter what ores they are, move them all over. There is divine fire in the exquisite 7 orifices pot. Anything that goes and will be melted by the divine fire. Now, the entire project is waiting for the divine crystals. Hurry up, where's the array master? Go to the ancient city and carve the array in. No matter what array it is, carve it all into the ancient city. The ancient city is built with divine crystals and can accommodate any array, or restriction. Those that increase defense, those that resist attacks, and those that strengthen attacks. No matter what it is, put it all in. Hurry up and find a weapon refinement master and ask them to quickly refine the mold of the pavilion. Pay attention to carving the patterns. It must have an ancient charm. The atmosphere was buzzing with activity. Millions of monsters were busy working around the area. They almost wanted to use one hand to do the work as if they had 10 hands. Among the monsters, there were many human cultivators who did not have any monster chi. These human cultivators were not few in number, and they were also busy working. They were helping to build the ancient city. The strange thing was that there was no resentment on their faces. Instead, there was a trace of fanaticism. Looking at the majestic ancient city, their eyes could not help but light up. The majestic ancient city appeared in front of them again. The construction of the ancient city continued without stopping. In the ancient city, the Jasper Lake and the Lingxiao King Hall had been completed. The two of them were connected to each other. There were various carvings that made the King Hall look even more sacred and majestic. There was a kind of supreme majesty. Many dragon pillars and godly tigers were erected. It was like the center of the heavens. After the Jade Pool and the Lingxiao Palace were completed, the focus of the project was placed on the other places again. Step by step, the divine crystals were refined bit by bit and filled into the embryonic membrane that looked like the ancient city. The divine crystals and the embryonic membrane were merged into one. One had to know that the ancient city was extremely huge. It was even bigger than the Earth in his previous life. If it was really built, it could easily accommodate tens of billions of monsters. It was obvious how big it was. If the ancient city was divided into 100 parts. Now, the completed part was less than 1% of this. Only half of this 1% was completed. The progress seemed slow. In fact, the real reason was the lack of materials to refine the divine crystals. It could not meet the refining speed at all. As a result, the forging speed could not be increased at all. Crazy D must seize the supreme benefits in the 1,000 treasure Crimson Tide. Otherwise, it would take an unimaginable amount of time and effort to build the 1,000 Demon City. Only Tian Jizi, that old guy, could come up with such an ancient city. After looking at the ancient city, Ming could not help but mutter again. If I don't succeed this time, I will die trying. I have no way out. Di Shirtian's eyes were very deep. This time, when he made a move against the 10 immortal sects, he had already blocked his way out. Otherwise, he could get endless benefits in the 1,000 treasure Crimson Tide and build the 1,000 Demon City. He would have a real place to settle down. Damn, it's my fault. I originally planned to release it at the 3rd watch today. I didn't expect it to be Valentine's Day. There are some things that everyone knows, but I will still keep it at the 2nd watch. I just came back not long ago. The next chapter will be late. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.